Welcome to the April 26, 2022 regular meeting of the City of Troy Planning Commission. Copies of the agenda for tonight's meeting are available at the entrance to the room. Agendas and minutes of prior meetings are available on the city's website. The meeting will be conducted in accordance with the agenda as presented or amended by the Planning Commission.
State law establishes planning commissions. This planning commission is comprised of 9 residents appointed to serve our community. Members are appointed by the mayor and confirmed by city council. Other individuals participating in the meeting include representatives of the city's planning department, city attorney's office, and the city's planning consultant, Carlisle Wortman Associates.
If you wish to address the Planning Commission this evening, please come forward to the lectern when recognized and clearly print your name and address on the sign-in sheet. Please begin your remarks by stating your name for the benefit of the commissioners. All remarks that will be addressed to the Planning Commission, not to anyone else in the room. If you have a cell phone or any other device that might disrupt the meeting tonight, please either switch it to a silent mode or turn it off. At this time, I'll ask the Planning Commission Recording Secretary, Kathy Zarnecki, to conduct the roll call.
Mr. Fiegner?
Here.
Mr. Faison?
Here.
Mr. Hudson?
Here.
Mr. Krent?
Here.
Mr. Lambert?
Here.
Ms. Malala-Holly?
Here.
Ms. Parakis?
Here.
Mr. Rahman?
Here.
Mr. Tagle?
Here.
Quorum present, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Zarnecki. Next on the agenda is the approval of tonight's agenda. Is there a motion by one of the commissioners to approve the agenda? Mr. Buechner makes a motion. Mr. Krent makes a second.
You ready, Mr.
Yep.
Mr. Faison?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Krent?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Ms. Malala-Holly?
Yes.
Ms. Parakis?
Yes.
Mr. Rahman?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Mr. Fiegner?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the April 12th meeting. Is there a motion to approve those minutes? Mr. Tagle makes a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Parakis makes a second. Ready for the roll call?
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Krent?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Ms. Malala-Holly?
Yes.
Ms. Parakis?
Yes.
Mr. Rahman?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Mr. Buechner?
Yes.
Mr. Faison?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is public comment for those items that are not on the agenda tonight. So is there anyone that would like to address the Planning Commission for an item that is not on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll go on to our public hearing. It's a preliminary site plan review, SPJPLN 2021-0023, proposed Eckford Oaks one-family residential cluster, which is the north side of Eckford, west of Rochester Road, PIN 88-20-15-251-026 and 88-20-15-251-017. Section 15, currently zoned R1B, one-family residential district. Mr. Carlisle?
Excuse me, yes, thank you. I have a very brief presentation of tonight's application in front of you. For a little background, the site is located in Eckford, which is just west of Rochester Road. The site is 2 parcels, totaling approximately 8.7 acres in area. The site is currently improved with one single-family home, but the site is encumbered with wetlands, floodplain, floodway, and significant tree cover. We note Eckford is a gravel road, and the proposal would be to pave this portion of the development up to where it's currently paved on Eckford. For background with regards to the adjacent properties, to the north, that green box is EP zoned land. It's actually city owned, and it's an extension of the existing DPW site, which is northeast of this proposed site. To the south, east, and west are all R1C, one-family residential, and those are all single-family homes. So again, this does butt up to EP zone property, however, that's owned by the city. With regards to natural resources, this site, as I noted, does have significant natural resources. On it include 8 wetlands. Those are regulated by EGLE, State Regulatory Agency for Wetlands. In addition, it does include the Hoyton Drain. Apologize if I pronounced that incorrectly. But with the Hoyton Drain, there is also floodplain and floodway, and that is also regulated by EGLE. It's noted by the engineering department that FEMA-approved floodplain boundary would be required, as well as a Oakland County Drain Commission permit for any work in and around the Hoyton Drain will be required, but that would be required till part of final engineering approval. It would not be required in this initial stage of proposal. We have asked that the applicant provide a limits of grading to indicate the amount of disturbance with regards to floodplain wetland impact. It has been submitted, but we have not had time to review or verify that by the engineering department. As required with any cluster submittal, there is to be a parallel plan that establishes the base number of units. I apologize, there's a typo up there. The base number of units is actually 21 units, which is shown on the application in front of you. We do note that the site, the parallel plan utilizes most of the site. However, it does take out the area that's not buildable because it's located in the floodway of the drain. The site plan is located in front of you. It consists of 26 units. They're spread out around the site. They do leave a large open space area in the middle and lower end of the site adjacent to Eckford. The lots range in area between 6,000 square feet and 13,000 square feet. We know that the applicant, through the cluster option, is seeking 5 additional units above the parallel plan by providing 45% would remain as open space. The open space, as I noted, is 45%. It's that kind of gray highlighted area in the middle. It's located along the floodplain and floodway, and it does include some wetland areas as well. In the tree survey conducted by the applicant, they have identified 313 trees. Contrary to many of our applications that we received, they did note that most of them are actually of good quality with only a few invasive species. Of those trees, the applicant proposes to remove 153 regulated trees, but they are proposing to protect 160 regulated trees. Because of the amount of trees taken out versus the amount saved, there's no tree mitigation required to replace those trees removed. The yellow line kind of highlights the area where those trees will be saved. Again, it follows most of the open space. It does follow some trees that will be within lots that will be preserved, and again follows the kind of the drain and the floodway location. In addition, the applicant is also proposing a 10-foot wide public bike path through the development. This would connect a future path that would go through the DPW yard to the north, as well as some private, potentially a private development again to the north, and go all the way down to the dog park location where the trail currently exists. We do note that the applicant is asking some encroachments. These are for decks located along the northern property line there. You can see kind of highlighted in red. It's a deck encroachment for 5 through unit 12, encroaching into the 25 perimeter setback, as well as decks for 5 through 12 into the required 25-foot rear yard setback. We do note that this does abut to the EP zone property, and so conceivably there would be no future development north where they are trying to seek that encroachment. We do also note Unit 13, which is kind of in that northeast corner of the site, is encroaching 20 feet into the required 50-foot perimeter setback, and that's because it's located next to the DPW yard, which has a much larger setback than the EP zone property. Again, we want to note these encroachments are again along that northern property line, which abuts the DPW yard and the EP zone property. The applicant has shown the proposed renderings and elevations. They have proposing 3 housing options, which range from 1,800 square feet with a ranch to a second floor with up to 2,500 square feet colonial. They have noted that they have a commitment to stay under 2,500 square feet or less, and they will not build a house that's larger than that 2,500 square feet. We do note that the elevations were provided, but they did not provide materials, so we can't comment on the material selection with this application. As the Planning Commission is well aware, there are a number of standards that the Planning Commission would consider as part of this application. This includes the long-term protection and preservation of natural resources, natural features, and open space, the use of innovative and creative design, whether or not an appropriate buffer and land use transition has been applied. Does the application provide a compatible mix of open space, landscape area, and pedestrian amenities? Has the applicant provided sustainable design features? Is the applicant going to provide a means for owning the common open space and protecting it from development in perpetuity? Is the density bonus commensurate with the benefit offered to achieve the said bonus? Is the cluster development adequately served by public services and facilities? And lastly, is the architectural form, scale, massing ensure that all buildings are proportioned and complementary? So in summary, the grading will be reviewed by the engineer to confirm impact upon on-site wetlands and floodplains. The applicant is seeking relief for the decks for units 5 through 12, 15, and 17 to encroach into the 25 rear yard setback, as well as encroaching into the 25-yard setback, as well as unit 13 to encroach 20 feet into the required 50-foot perimeter setback. In addition, we do ask the applicant indicate materials. So, in summary, for 5 additional units, over what the parallel plan would allow for, the applicant is providing 45% open space, providing additional protection of wetland that would not be done under a conventional subdivision, additional protection of floodplain that wouldn't be done under a conventional subdivision, and additional woodland protection. So, with that summary, the Planning Commission is asked to hold a public hearing and determine if the requirements to qualify for a cluster option have been met, if the standards have been met, and if any additional number of units is commensurate, if the additional number of units is commensurate with the open space being preserved and asked for. Thank you.
Mr. Carlisle. Any questions from members of the commission for Mr. Carlisle? Yes, Mr. Faison.
Mr. Carlisle, could you go to the parallel plan? Yeah, that one. So I was curious. I see the floodplain or the floodway that heads to the drain, and it cuts through those units on the, I guess, on the south. And is that feasible that they would build?
So it's not feasible to build in the floodway. So this line essentially is the floodway, this kind of dashed line.
Right.
So they would not be able to build within the floodway. Outside of that, it's not really shown on this, is the flood plain. You can build within the flood plain, which we locate in these locations. It requires cut and fill and extra engineering is what we like to call it. So feasibly, they could build on these 3 lots, even though part of the lot is located within the floodway. It's unusual, it's expensive, but it can be done, and that's why we did count it towards the parallel plan. That being said, the applicant is asking for 21 units on the parallel plan. Based on 45% open space, they could get up to 30 units. So they're asking for 26. If we were to eliminate these 3 lots from their parallel plan, that would take them down to 18. So with 18 units of the parallel plan, if they still provided 45% open space, that would get them up to the 26 they're asking for. So with that math, we did find that these were to be included in the parallel plan for discussion of the Planning Commission tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Barakas.
Just along that note, though, there were, I think, 8 wetlands. If you flip to the slide that shows the wetlands, 1, 2, 3, 4, like those ones up there, I believe that there were houses built in the wetlands as well. So how does the math add up if we take those into account?
So by the state of Michigan, wetlands are a lot easier to build in than a floodway or floodplain. It simply requires you to get a permit from Eagle, and you either compensate on site or they allow you to compensate off site or pay into a fund essentially to develop within wetlands. So it's much easier by the state of Michigan to develop in a wetland. It's much more difficult to develop obviously in a flood plain.
But it is at a cost to the developer?
It would be a cost to a developer, home builder, whoever decides to build within a wetland.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions for Mr. Carlisle? Yes,
I have one
Mr. Rama, go ahead.
question, and probably that's for Mr. Savidan. So, do we have any regulation where, if the plots are of certain size in certain area in the city, that we can just make smaller plot houses? Like with these, the acreage for the neighboring plots are pretty big, right? Large, like 1 acre or something. So my question to you, is there any regulation that we cannot have smaller plots?
The regulation is the zoning ordinance. The zoning district is R1C, and the provisions of the R1C are laid out in the zoning district.
Okay,
So
so
the
this
fact-
district,
The fact that there's lots here that are, well, these 2 lots combined are 8.7 acres. The 1 lot is significantly greater than 1 acre. But the zoning is R1C, and it's, as far as I know, it's been R1C zoning since we were a city, to the best of my knowledge. So that's the regulation. The unique,
No.
I think what you're getting at is here, is the way that this, the way that Eckford has been developed over time is with lots that are larger.
Yeah, there was a reason for that, right? And the empty space there is a reason for having it this size for time being. The question is, why was that? Do you have that historical background that you can know, as far as you know? Is it because of the wetland and so on and so forth, or is it because of the?
That could be. I think the floodplain and the wetlands make it more challenging. I mean, all things being equal, if you got two properties that are the exact same, one has got floodplain and wetlands on it, one doesn't, which one's going to be developed first, right? So I think it's there's people in the audience, I'm guessing, who've lived in Eckford a long time that have more history than I do. But, we simply haven't had a development application like this. I've been here 20 years. This is the first time we've seen this development application for the street.
Initial question, I'll end with that there is no certain, other than the zoning ordinance, that in certain area, the plot size have to be, this big, or
No, the zoning ordinance is the regulation.
that's the regulation.
The R1C
and
regulation.
that area is, R1C is the,
Correct.
okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Carlisle? Yes, Ms. Malala.
Mr. Savadont, did I hear you correctly? You said no other proposals had come in the past for development in this particular area? Is that what you said?
No, not along Eckford that I recall, no.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
In the 20 years that I've worked for the city.
Sure. Thanks.
Just one last question, just so that the public is aware of the fact, though, so they understand that the base, and this is kind of Mr. Rahman's question, the basic zoning is if city council ultimately rejects the cluster plan, the developer could still put 21 houses on this piece of property. Is that correct?
That's correct. So, yeah, there's what we call by right development, which is, do you meet the requirements of the R1C? We reviewed this parallel plan versus those requirements, and yes, they meet the requirements of the R1C. That would allow 21 units. So if this were to be rejected by the Planning Commission, based on Planning Commission and City Council, ultimately they could come back with something that looks, I don't know if it'll look exactly like this, but they could come back with a site plan that is similar to this site plan in front of you.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions?
I just want to make sure that this plan doesn't look like it met all the requirements for those flat plane and other things. So that drawing is not really I would say, an accurate drawing. Because, in the original plan, the proposal, we have all this formula we use so that we don't construct anything on the floodplain or floodway.
So
You're comparing something which is not really vetted versus this is just not a good comparison.
Well,
Because I don't know if I follow the rule, then I can have 21.
So, just to be clear, the floodway is in here. You can't build in the floodway, but there's still this portion of the building envelope. As long as so the minimum square footage for a unit in this zoning district is 1,200 square feet. So and I don't have a scale in front of me right here, but my guess is this probably exceeds 1,200 square feet. So this is a buildable lot. Now, could this have shown, taken this part of the envelope off? Absolutely. It would have been more accurate, but I'm very confident. I mean, looking at this is, I'm sure these envelopes that are remaining still are 1,200 square feet.
I live on Houghton Drain, one of our houses, so I know the surrounding area. So I think you cannot just build so close, that's my understanding. Because I have practical experience. And also there are some other issues that some of my neighbors are talking about these days, that, the overflow of water and all these things. So that's why it kind of...
Whether it's economically feasible is another question, but you could build, those 3 lots are buildable, provided that you get all your FEMA permits, et cetera, and you don't construct it in the floodway.
Yeah, that's exactly what I said. It's like, it may be economically not feasible, but we are comparing something which is not economically not feasible and then comparing with something which is being proposed. So that's not
I think Ms.
apple to apple.
I think Ms.
comparison.
Dufresne would, theoretically, I believe, I agree, but I don't think when we review a zoning ordinance, we can take into what's economically feasible. We have to say, does it meet the requirements to build under, which is state, federal, and local regulations, including zoning ordinance. This parallel plan meets those requirements. So we can't say, just because it may not be economically feasible, it's not realistic from a purpose of applying the zoning ordinance. That being said, what's asked for you tonight in the front of the planning commission is, does the cluster plan, based on the parallel plan, does those meet the standards under which you review it? And is the density bonus of 5 extra units, is it commensurate with the benefits being provided by the applicant?
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Any other questions? Yes, Mr. Faison.
Just for you, Ben, or Brent, just clarifying, the EP zoned property that abuts this property, I just wanted to understand, I know we've talked about it before, like, that designation, what does that mean? Is that property developable? And if it is, what would be the circumstances where it could be developed?
So, I'll start and you can jump in. EP designation is kind of a legacy zoning designation. How we would typically do that today would be under a conservation easement, which is essentially, in some ways, very, very similar. Yes, it's developable unless there is a deed restriction or something that we are not aware of at this point. One, it would take two things. One, it's owned by the city.
Okay.
So it would have to be an application from the city either to sell it to somebody or have the city do the application themselves. And two, it would require a rezoning to be acted upon by your own city council based on a recommendation from the planning commission. So in theory, it's developable, likely not developable because of those two reasons.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll call up the petitioner for a presentation on what they propose for this property. If you make sure you sign in and then introduce yourself.
My name is Bruce Michael. I'm the developer with Eckford Woods, who owns the property at this point. Excuse me while I'm not capable of doing two things at once, so I'll get this done here. I'm not going to take a lot of time presenting. I think you've seen quite a bit of information that was presented. I'll just fill in the blanks in a couple places where I thought we had submitted certain things and we hadn't. In terms of materials, there's a couple different things I want to talk about our architectural style and what we're doing. One is, as everybody's looked at these days, the concept of the craftsman style of house, which has the columns and not kind of the traditional all brick look that you see so often that was built in Troy over the years. We're doing a couple things here that we're committed to and will continue to do. One is that the two major materials are stone and wood siding. One of the other major things that we do with all these houses is every single house will have a covered front porch that's 6 feet deep along the entire frontage except for where the garage is. Lastly, what we've committed ourselves to is to serve basically the part of the public that presently isn't getting this kind of house, which is generally, I'll call it the baby boomers, the people born between 46 and 64, of which I'm one. And generally what's happened is a lot of the larger builders are still building the large two-story house for the second move-up home buyer whose kids are in high school. Well, there's 70 million of us whose kids are gone, and we want to move in something a little bit smaller. We're concerned about the fact that eventually we're not going to be able to get up the stairs, so we want to live in a ranch. So what we're proposing is all ranches. We have one of our models is a first floor master with a den and 2 bedrooms upstairs. I call them a Cape Cod or a first floor master for a couple of lots that are a little bit shallower that we're not going to be able to put that deep of an envelope on. But the intention is to stay with this concept of serving that part of the public which is not being served. We're not doing an age-restricted community, but I'll call it age-targeted because of the style of the housing that we're doing. We also provide several structural options that can go on each of the houses, including covered porches and screened-in porches and additions, as well as the decks that we've asked for the relief on to be able to put in the rear yards. So I apologize to the planning department for not providing the material lists I thought I had, but that's what we're intending to build. We also are a participant in the intended regional detention facility that the city has approached several of us developers about, and we would be contributors to the cost of that, and that allows us also to save more trees and not have areas that would be disturbed for stormwater detention basins. And then finally, we were asked to participate in the bike path, so the bike path can be extended all the way from, is it Waddles up to Long Lake, I believe it is. And so we're providing that in consultation with the planning department in the location that you see there. I'm here to answer any other questions you may have.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Parakis.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mickel, for being here and answering those questions. That was very helpful. Could you give us an approximate cost of the home, like the price point?
These will probably go for $600,000 to $800,000.
Okay, so I loved what I was hearing about the targeting that group of people who were looking to downsize and their kids are off at college, but that seems like an awfully high price point, especially for the size of a home.
That's the end point. So what we do is a little bit differently than some of the builders which say, here's your house, that's all you get. We provide a base house that has lots of possible options. And most people, when they get into this, so we'll start in the fives is what will happen, is the base house will be, and then people will add whatever it is that they want to do. Because the people in this age group have been around, have seen a lot of things, they know what they want. So a lot of times we'll have a sunroom addition, screened-in porch, finished basement, all those kinds of things which add to the overall price of the house as they go out the door.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Yes, Mr. Rami.
My question is, like the ranch style house that you showed, is this something that you already know how many of them will be ranch style, or it's just the customer would come and talk to you and they will decide if it's going to be ranch style or the colonial?
In our application, we provided 3 different floor plans, 2 of which are ranches, one of which is a first floor master with 2 bedrooms up. The design of all the houses is based on a ranch, and unlike most colonial houses, you've got a full second floor, and then you've got a roof on top of that, so it makes the house a lot bigger and taller. These are all based on the roof starting at the top of the first floor wall, and any second floor that's in it is essentially like a dormer that's built out of the roof itself. So their visual impact is a lot less than the larger colonial houses.
But functionally, all of them could be 2-story with no master bedroom in the ground floor. It's possible.
Certainly is, but that's not.
Thank you.
That's not who we are and what we're doing.
Because that's the customer's choice, right? It's not your choice.
Well, we're only going to provide those 3 models that we showed. We're not going to come in and say, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, you can go ahead and buy whatever you want, we'll build whatever you want. We're only offering the ranch style houses.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Mr. Krent.
You indicated that the siding would be wood. Is that some kind of a wood that doesn't rot?
Yes. I brought with me, if I can show you briefly, some of the samples of the stone. The wood itself is, Louisiana Pacific builds something called LP Smart Side, which is basically an engineered wood siding that's got, I think it's potassium borate or sodium borate in it, so that it has a 30-year warranty on it, won't fade, and is insect-proof or insect-resistant. Would be a good description of it. Comes in lots of different colors, is a maintenance-free product once you put it in place. Is also designed so that it has a lot of these kinds of flanges that allow you to nail or screw the product in without leaving exposed screw holes that everybody can see. Our front porches are actually decks, and so we build those like you would a deck with wood framing, and then cover them in a composite deck material like Trex.
Very nice. Well, I appreciate the Craftsman style homes. I'm familiar with them, and it's nice to see that quality look because they were considered, and they still are, a quality build. So thank you.
Mr. Tagle, I know you're our materials guru here, and while he has his materials up there, did you have any questions for him about what you see there?
Well, he clarified the wood comment. It's not a wood product. It's a combination of a more durable, man-made product that looks like wood.
Okay.
I do have a couple of questions going through, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
Looking at your plans and elevations, I did see the plan where it had a master on the first floor and 2 bedrooms up, but I also see a number of plans that have a 3rd bedroom. It's called bedroom number 3 upstairs. Talk a little bit about that and how that relates to the ranch. Looking at the 2 floor plans, I didn't reconcile how the stairs fit together, getting it from the first floor up to the upper levels, and how that really fits on there. And part of that question too is, if it's a ranch that's selected, the rendering that was up there showed a large dormer type form over the garage. Is that a false dormer, or is that actually a bedroom up there?
That's a false, that's in the base, in the ranch plan that does not have the option of taking the upstairs suite. That's one of the possible elevations, so it would be a false dormer.
That's a false dormer?
Correct.
Okay. And do you have a 2-story plan that has just a single bedroom upstairs? You have with a master down and 1 or 2 bedrooms down and another?
So generally, the ranch plans are the 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath on the first floor, with the option that if somebody wants to add, their Eagle's Nest loft upstairs, I'll call it, they can add that suite upstairs, which is a bedroom, bathroom, and a closet. The elevations will allow us to build that unit either with the dormer that you see or the window out the side wall of the unit, so that we're not having to add additional height to the house.
You'd mentioned something about the target audience that you're going after, and I was curious, had you given any thought as far as your planning inside the house, as far as wheelchair accessibility, larger bathrooms, larger doorways, things like that? The one bathroom I see on the first floor is definitely more of a conventional, fully capable individual of walking in, and as opposed to a wheelchair or someone on crutches.
So generally and you're looking at some very early marketing plans that were done, but generally what we're looking to do is just put all 3-foot wide doorways in the entire house except for walk-in closets typically. The master bath we've designed so that it could end up being something that could be wheelchair adaptable or accessible. And then there's a route that we can have that goes all the way through the house that allows it to be, is it type 1A, I believe? That can be for the houses. Built for a number of people with unique physical circumstances, modifications to the houses to be able to accommodate those kinds of things. One of our customers is a woman who's only 4 foot 6 inches tall. And so we ended up designing a lot of stuff that accommodated that height, including a stairs that only had 6-inch risers on it. It made it much longer, but it's what she wanted. And so we provided that for her.
Last comment is one that I don't see a solution to, but one of the things we try to do, and I think it's in our ordinance, is not allowing the garage door to be a prominent element on the street. And, with the cluster option and the smaller size lots, that presents some problems with the layout. I guess, unfortunately, again, we're still dealing with that issue.
A couple things. One is that the garage does not stick past the front porch. So that stops the snout house effect, which I built a lot of those back in the early 90s. Secondly, we're taking the garage door and it will be at least as decorative as shown here with the lights, I'm not sure if we'll do those handles per se, but we're going to do the kinds of things that try to bring that door a little less prominent in it. We also usually paint it the same color as the siding. And a lot of times that makes the door tend to disappear some more.
Thank you.
More questions from the commission? Mr. Beekner.
Two questions. One, I'm assuming no basement. Sorry if that's a dumb question.
No basements, full basements.
Full basement?
Yes.
Discussions about the floodplain. I think everybody in the room's a Michigan resident. Mother Nature's a powerful thing. What are your thoughts on that?
The buildings have all been designed, the grading plan has been laid out, and the elevations, the buildings designed, so everything is out of the floodplain. All the lots are out of the floodplain. And I believe we have the slab elevation of the basement is above the 100-year floodplain. And it was discussed with the city engineer.
Any other questions? Yes, Ms. Parakis.
How many units are you looking for deviations with respect to the setbacks? Because I thought that I saw a different slide go up from what we had in our packets.
If somebody can go back to the slide where I think the circle is, there you go. So lot 13, which is in your northeast corner of the property, part of that lot backs up to the CF zone land where the maintenance DPW facility is. The EP zone has no setbacks whatsoever. And as I understand the cluster ordinance is your perimeter setbacks have to match whatever the setbacks are in your surrounding zones. In the case of the EP, there is no setback, so technically, you have 0 in terms of that particular measure, and we've asked for 25. In the case of Unit 13, about halfway into the lot, the CF zoning comes into play. And that zone has a 50-foot setback. So we would have to have a 50-foot setback in half of the lot. We're asking for relief from that down to the 25 feet. And we're not backing up to a residential neighbor who would be affected in any way. The other thing we're asking for is basically the ability to build our decks. As I understand, a patio can be built into the rear yard setback without relief under the cluster, but a deck that has perhaps a handrail or whatever has to have a waiver if it's going to extend into the rear yard setback. So we asked for a limited amount of setback actually based on a certain size deck. We didn't say the whole rear. I think we asked for a specific ability to put a deck back there, like a 12 by 16 deck into those rear yard setbacks. They're all located on that north side, as Ben had indicated, which is adjacent to either the CF or the EP, I think, EP zone property where we don't presently have any residential neighbors.
So it's 9 of the 26 units?
I think so. 5 through 13. And I think we asked for a relief on lot 15 also for the deck.
Yep.
Yes.
We kept the 40-foot setback, which respects what
10 and
the
10
R1s.
lot 15.
5 through
Yeah.
12, 15.
Ms. Malalahi.
Thank you, Chairman. Couple questions. One, how far does your lot line sit from the DPW site? What are we looking at in terms of, say, that home gets built and there is a deck put in and the residents of the family are sitting on the deck? What will they see when they are sitting on the deck? Are they going to be seeing trees in the backyard, which covers or shelters from the DPW site, or are they going to see the DPW site to a certain extent? What are we looking at?
Probably if we look at the aerial photograph slide, probably gives you a better indicator. So if you look at the majority of the lots back up to what now is a wooded area, some of it probably is wetland in that area and is owned by the city with that EP designation on it. The last 2 lots on the northeast corner are backing up to a part of the DPW yard, and you can see it looks like there's probably 50 feet, am I guessing right there, between our property line and where the disturbed area is, and the rest of it's wooded in between.
Okay. I know the map was presented to us by Mr. Savidant about the disturbed area, and that an analysis is still underway on that. I'm just, so me being on this planning commission, I haven't seen a project come by that I feel has too many things that is working in this site. Most importantly, of course, we all know the wetlands and the fact that there is a drain, there is limitations to where you can put the houses, and also, of course, being in that floodplain area, wetlands area, preservation of open space requirement. I just felt, when I looked at your proposed plan of 21 units, can that be lessened in any way so we can increase the open space considering what we are looking at here in terms of the floodplain, drain and everything? Can we lessen the density from a 21 to say a 15 maybe?
Well, if you were to go back to the parallel plan, the planning department indicated that if you took the 3 lots that front on Eckford on the south end and just say that you can't build on those, even though they've said that you can because the lots are not entirely encumbered by the floodway. The floodway being different than the floodplain because the floodway is where water actually flows during a 100-year flood. So nobody wants to get into that area. As opposed to the floodplain, which generally they allow you to fill with some compensation somewhere for it, for the storage you might lose, and then build your units if desired. When the planning department said, okay, if we just take away those 3 lots, we're at 18 lots in our parallel plan, and you end up with the 45% open space, which is nearly half of the site is being left as open space, that we would still comply with the density provisions that are allowed in the cluster zoning option, which is the 26 lots that we have proposed. Another thing I'll mention is we've already had meetings with Eagle on the site and discussed with them the fill of the property. If we could put up the slide that has the wetlands on it. The 5 smaller pieces of wetland that are shown there are actually considered fairly low-quality wetland by the Eagle, and they've actually walked the site with our wetland consultants, so it's not sight unseen. Obviously, the wetland that's in the drain, or I'll call it a creek, because it's really a creek is what it feels like to me, is clearly precious and important, and we're only impacting that where we have to put a road over it. And then the wetland in the southwest area is not being disturbed, and that would be one that Eagle considers, I'm sorry, I'm still using DEQ, Eagle considers to be more important. It's close to the stream. It's a higher quality wetland in their minds. So we actually discussed a fill permit with them. They indicated they can't tell you in a pre-application conference whether or not they'll grant the permit or not, but our consultant tells us that based on the low quality of those wetlands, they would be willing to allow a wetland fill permit to fill those in.
How much of all the construction disturbance that's going to happen impact this area? I'm just looking at everything that will be turned up in that area, on the earth completely turned upside down to build these homes. How much of all that will have an impact? And then, of course, future residences so close, sitting close to the drain. What are the environmental impacts that one should be looking at before approving such a project?
Well, with the cluster, we're avoiding a lot of the floodplain that we might otherwise go ahead and seek a floodplain fill permit and then fill so that we can build lots on it. As you saw in the parallel plan, a lot of the lots would be in that floodplain area that's north of the drain itself. So we're avoiding most of that floodplain by doing the cluster that we're proposing. We're also saving more than half the trees on the site. And if we did not do the cluster, a lot of those trees would not get saved. Now, some of the areas they would because we're not touching that at all, but if we were to do the parallel plan, more trees would end up would be cut. So we looked at it and said, wow, every neighbor that's in here is going to look at that wooded stream is still going to be there from Eckford. And every one of our residents that lives in there is going to either be backing up to the EP zoned land, which is wooded and pretty, or backing up to the wooded Houghton Drain area. And so everybody's going to end up with a kind of a cloistered feel, you know, a feel of being not out in the middle of suburbia, I'll call it.
Okay, thank you for answering the questions.
Mr. Krent.
Now, I know you said earlier that you're going to contribute money for the regional drain. So could you just give us an overview of the water flow, where it's going to from the homes, especially along the north edge?
So there'll be a storm drain that will actually serve a property to the south also, and it'll follow the bike path that's shown and go up through the EP zone land to the proposed regional detention basin that the city would build. Everything on the site is my understanding, and I could be incorrect here because the engineers drew it, is going to ultimately go to that pipe and then go into the regional detention basin.
So knowing that, is the development going to happen before or after that regional drain is developed?
I don't know, it's so early. I know everybody in the meetings that were held with the city and was it 5 developers, Brent, or 6?
4, I think.
4?
There's quite a few.
That all committed, said, yes, we will do this. And I'm not certain exactly how the timing is going to work out for everything, but I would assume the city's not going to allow us to go ahead and not have anywhere to put our stormwater detention,
Got
or
it. Okay,
stormwater.
just I wanted to get a picture of it. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, may I?
Yes.
So this is, as we all know, this is a multi-step process. Step 1 is preliminary site plan review, preliminary site plan approval. The Planning Commission is a recommending body, so the Planning Commission does not have final say in this application. It goes to City Council, also at a public hearing. So anyone who's attending this meeting this evening, again, they're only a recommending body. It will go before council. You can all attend City Council, attend a public hearing, make comment at that public hearing. If this application is granted preliminary site plan approval by City Council, it then has to be engineered. So what's been provided so far is relatively rudimentary calculations, basically showing that the water is going to flow downhill. General drainage calculations has not been engineered because it's not, I think, fair in a way, maybe is the right word, to require full-scale engineering before the Planning Commission or City Council have even seen it. That's not pragmatic. But if it does achieve preliminary site plan approval, it will have to be engineered. There'll be detailed engineering drawings provided to the City Engineering Department. Those drawings are prepared by a professional engineer licensed in the state of Michigan, reviewed by our engineering department, which they're all licensed engineers in the state of Michigan, to ensure, and I know where you're going with this, Mr. Krent, to ensure that the negative impacts of this development, including drainage and rainwater, does not impact neighboring properties. That's imperative. I just want to be clear. Mr. Michael is obligated that this development does not negatively impact the neighbors in terms of stormwater.
Thank you.
And it'll actually be reviewed not just by the city, but also by the county, because that's a county drain.
Very good. Thank you.
I have a question for you because I kind of fit into that same age group that you're in. And I know one of the concerns a lot of people in our age group have in Troy is the lack of ranch-style homes because, we're getting to that point where we don't want to be climbing a lot of stairs. In exchange for the potential that we were to recommend to City Council that there be some relief as far as the setbacks are concerned, would you be willing to stipulate a certain percentage of the homes to be ranch-style to meet the needs of the community, especially those of us who are entering into that age group that we don't want to be climbing stairs?
Yes, we would.
Would you be able to give us an idea of what percentage you might be willing to do that?
I believe there's only I'd have to go back and look at I've actually done a detailed analysis of what will fit where. And for instance, we need on Unit 15, and I believe Unit 3, and maybe Unit 17, we would need to do that Ontario plan, which you saw had the 2 bedrooms up but still had the first floor master. Those we can't fit a footprint that allows us to do a reasonably sized ranch. Okay. Rooms would be too small. So we'd be willing to commit that we would do ranches wherever we can fit them in accordance with the plans that we submitted. We intend to build those plans. Those are our plans. So do 60%, 70%, just to be safe in case there's a couple lots that we're missing?
We can have the commission discuss that after the public hearing and see if that's something that's feasible. Any other questions from the commission? Yes.
I have one last question. We have an image of the tree survey, and when I'm looking, I'm seeing, we've heard that the majority, most of the trees are actually good trees. Or, for lack of a better term. There's a better term for that.
You mean our consultant didn't lie about what the trees are like?
The worth saving, I guess. And so when I look at the tree survey and I see the houses and I see where there's trees, you X'd out the tree. But there's I guess it would be Unit 1, for example. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's about 7 trees in the backyard that I couldn't figure out why you would cut those down. Yeah, this one right here.
Here.
Yeah, why all these trees, why do those have to come down?
You might want to go to the microphone so we can all hear.
So engineers tend to, when they do this, they tend to assume that they're going to get out there with a bulldozer and have to whack everything. I'm trained as an urban planner and a landscape architect, so I'm pretty partial to trees. And if there's a way we can save them and still provide the city engineers required rear yard drainage requirements, so they won't just let the water go back there. If they'll let us be creative, for instance, instead of doing a hard pipe with a yard basin at each lot corner, if they would allow us to do maybe something like a French trench, which is a flexible pipe and then drains into a structure somewhere, and we can wind that in between those existing root systems of those trees. Love to do that. Mature trees create value. People love there's some people who don't. Some people would want to have the big open space, but a lot of people like the secluded wooded feel that this would have. So you'd have my commitment that we're going to do everything we can to save every tree that we can on a lot if it's possible.
Okay, I mean, I appreciate that. I drove through that area. I admit I'd never been down that street before, and that street is gorgeous, all the way from Livernois, all the way to Rochester Road. And even to the east of this area, in the neighborhood from Livernois, what was so impressive to me were the houses that were all different and unique, and the very mature trees. So, I mean, I like to have your commitment, but I would want more. When I see this with all the X's, I could just look and come up with at least 26 trees, and that's just by glancing, that seemed to me to be, easily savable, or at least savable. I don't know how easy, but there was no house near it. And so I would like, there to be another look at that with a new presentation of the trees that would for sure not be taken down.
We certainly want to save everything we can. The things I will remind you is that what you don't see when you look at that particular drawing is the extent of the grading that has to be done just to make the houses drain properly, so that the water drains away from the house and into the streets and into the storm sewers. And typically when you have to grade inside of the root ball of the tree, usually it results in the tree dying. And so most of the times, most of the professionals will basically say, look, if I'm going to have to grade inside of the crown of the tree, I'm going to assume it's going to go. And that's usually what the engineers do. They kind of take a more conservative look at it. We certainly will be happy to, at final, come back and save every tree we possibly can within reason that can be done. And the issue is we don't want to say we can save a tree and then 2 years later, the thing dies, and then the neighbors, the person that owns the property has to cut it down. So we just want to make sure that we're proposing to do stuff that feasibly can be done, but certainly we would be happy to commit to a condition that says that applicant will use every reasonable or feasible effort to grade the site in such a way to be able to save the trees that are even within the lots. And as you can see in the northeast corner, I'm sorry, let me get this right, northwest corner, we have some fairly deep lots there because just the way the layout worked, and obviously kept all those trees you could possibly keep in the
I
backyard.
noticed that, yep.
So that is our intent. That's what we'd like to do, and be happy to stipulate to a condition that says that we'll exercise that look at the property and when we go in with our final engineering.
Any other questions for the petitioner?
So these decks are going to be pre-built with the house, or the customer would make their own deck?
We're going to give the customer the option of whether or not they want us to build them a deck or not. Sometimes they just don't want to do it at the time, or they don't have enough in their savings account or whatever it might be. But we will offer them, if they want us to build a deck, we'll include that as part of the package or not. It's their choice.
Now, this land is kind of slopey, right? It goes downward. So do you think that if the decks are not pre-built, then there will be some issue to walk out from the back, on the backyard?
Most of the lots, when we get done with them, actually are not going to be, there's not going to be that much slope on the lots. It ends up that in order for us to stay above the 100-year floodplain, most of the lots end up being fairly flat. So I don't think we're going to have a situation where we have to walk out, somebody's going to walk out the door. However...
But I think it's mentioned in the report that it's kind of like going downward toward the south, if I remember.
Along the drain itself, along the creek, yes, there's definitely some terrain, but that's the area that we're preserving and not getting involved with. That's the area that's going to stay.
And that's probably the one that Mr. Carlisle asked to give some clarification of the grading, right? Like, what is the demarcation of the grading line? Okay. So that has to
and
be...
we had gotten asked for that late, and we just provided it. But yes, our intention is, I think you could assume that the lots, wherever the lots are, and wherever the street is, you're going to have disturbance and you're going to lose vegetation, with the exception of perhaps some of the lots, there are some things you can do creatively, drainage-wise and grading-wise, to save the trees that are in the rear yards of the houses. Front yards, there's going to be way too much activity with the grading of the road and all, to not allow us to be able to save trees in those locations. But yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the commission? Seeing none, we'll have you take a seat, and we're going to open the public hearing at this point. And as I mentioned in our beginning remarks, when you come up to the podium, be sure to write your name in and let us know who you are. And because of the number of people, I don't know if everyone here wants to speak tonight. You're all welcome to speak, but we're going to limit comments to 3 minutes per person so everyone has an opportunity to speak. So, Mr. Savitt, you're the timekeeper, I guess, so we will invite the first person who wishes to speak to us now.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Just so you know, so the timer used to sit here, it now is over there, so I
Okay.
can't control it.
Okay.
I can use my stopwatch on my phone.
Okay.
But I'm going to have to verbally
All right.
indicate to you when 3 minutes is up. Is that okay?
That's fine, yeah. We're not as fancy as city council, so we don't have any lights flashing to tell you that your time is up. So, first citizen like to speak? Come on up, Mr. Kappas.
I appreciate you giving me a couple of minutes to speak. I will tell you, however, my remarks, I guarantee you, I'm going to try to keep them under 3 minutes, but considering everything that has to be said, I don't know that I'm going to be able to do that, so I'm hoping you'll allow me some latitude. I am Anthony Kappas. My house is 501 Eckford, and if you look at the drawing, you can just barely see my house on the left side. Right there on that particular, yeah, I'm just outside the property line on the west. Okay. Our street is a very, very unique street. We currently have 35 houses on that street. The homeowners of Eckford humbly request you, let us leave our street alone. We have a beautiful street. Somebody had asked, why hasn't there been a lot of interest in that particular area? It's because nobody sells. The property in question right now has been in the same family's name since the 60s. It was passed down from father to brother and sisters, and unfortunately last year that family lost two members of the family, leaving one surviving. He no longer wanted to have all the memories in the house. That was the reason the house went up for sale. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here right now. I'm assuming that I was told that you have some of my items that I wanted to bring up. So the first one I'll bring up is I have a petition that was signed by the members of the homeowners of Eckford. There are 35 houses on that street. 28 signed off on this, requesting that you leave our street alone. Do not allow him to put 75% more houses on a 2-block street. 26 houses from 35, 75%. Of the 7 additional people that I did not get names from on here, 2 of which are builders. This gentleman's one of them. The other gentleman is going to be representing Mondrian, who bought the Doherty property across the street from just the other side of on the south side of Eckford rather than on the north side. The other 3 people, one said he was going to be here. I do believe he's here. One woman said, I believe your cause, however, I just do not sign petitions. And then the last one was on vacation. I had no way of getting a hold of them. Nobody on that street wants our street changed. It's been like that since the 60s when it was first carved into Troy. The second thing I'll bring up is, they say that this...
Excuse me, Mr. Kappas, that's 3 minutes, Mr. Chairman.
I'll give you 2 more minutes to wrap it up.
Great. They say that this is in comparison to what's on there, on the street. No way, shape, or form. If you look at it, I have provided this sheet right here. This sheet right here shows you the difference as to what our street will look like versus what it looks right now. There's no way that complements our street. The smallest, we have two properties on our street that are less than 0.98 acres. The rest of them are that and above. Mine is just below 2 acres. And since I'm pressed for time, I'm going to jump to the very last item that I have on here. You'll also notice that I provided you a copy of the front page of the purchase agreement that this builder's agent presented to me. If you notice, it's $430,000. Sounds like a pretty reasonable price until you understand that my house is 3,200 square feet. I am on 2 acres. I have a 6-car garage. I have 5 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms. In today's market, in the city of Troy, that would equate to someplace between $600,000 to $800,000. He's going to be asking $800,000 for 2,400 square feet. So in essence, if you approve this and let him do that, you're letting him walk away with the profits and the property values from my house. Because his agent very specifically said to me, you better take this. This is a great deal. Once we start construction, nobody will want your house. You'll be sandwiched in between a subdivision and our complex. I don't understand how anybody can allow that to happen. I did talk to the man in good faith. I said,
Mr. Kappas, your time is up. So
give me an offer, and if it's reasonable and fair, I would consider. But to do that, you're just saying, take his money. I can't afford that. So please, I ask you to consider 9 is what we're asking. 1 for each acre, 9 across the back.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Candace. Next person that'd like to speak to us tonight, come on up. Be sure to sign your name in. We won't start the time until you start talking, so.
Get my age, you know, you need.
No problem.
Hi, good evening. My name is Randy German. I live 841 Eckford. I'm on the north side of the street, about one house east of where the dirt road starts, where it's paved. My mother-in-law built the house that I live in 1979, purchased the property, built the house there. I'm from the west side, Dearborn area, and I wanted to live more of a rural area. And when I met my wife, she didn't want to relocate. She wanted to live in Troy. And the reason we bought the house we live in is because of the street that it's on. I second everything this gentleman before me. I do not know him, but I did sign his petition, and I agree with everything he said. But I'm on an acre, and I'm on 1.14 acres, and that's the reason I bought the house, to live there. My house, the 2 houses east of me and across the street, there are 8 children. We have no sidewalks on our block. I don't know if you guys noticed that or not. We do have issues with speeding vehicles and things like that, and I am concerned because my boy, you know, he's starting a skateboard, he likes to ride his scooter, we don't have sidewalks, and we do have issues with the speeding vehicles, and then, like the gentleman said, increasing the population of the neighborhood by 75% really concerns a lot of us about the traffic that's going to go through there. Because if there was a 17.5 mile, that is it, right? And a lot of people think they're slick when the traffic backs up on Rochester Road. They cut through, you know. And also, I have a couple photos. I don't know if you'd like to see, but that is a drain. During, like right now, I got a security system on my house, cameras. If you look at the drain, it's not even as wide as this dais right here, and there's like an inch or 2 of water in it. When we do get the heavy rain, the big storms in the spring, I have a footbridge that crosses that drain. Water does go over the top of it, and I'm concerned about if this happens and they build all those houses in that drain, what's going to go on with the water, and they're going to encroach on all these homes, and are these people going to get a lemon, you know what I'm saying, if they build this? And I just feel really bad for the gentleman who just spoke up here. He lives on the west side, and the gentleman who lives on the east side. They both have these beautiful homes, and now they're going to just be, you know, encroached on with 26 lots. It just, you know, I just want to oppose this, and I don't mind if they built like every 100 feet, they built a house, and if there's 700-800 feet of frontal, 7 or 8 homes, that's fine. You're still keeping your acreage. I'd have no problem with that, you know, but, so that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
If you'd like to see the photos afterwards or whatever that I do have of the water, that the increased level of the storm and before and after, it is very substantial difference, you know, and it goes all the way through the neighborhood, so.
Thank you. Next member of the public, come on up. Make sure you sign in.
Dave Duda, 873 Eckford. We've lived there for 42 years. Seen a lot of changes. The horses are gone. We all went to that Eckford because of the rural nature of the street. This, as you can well see, will destroy that. I don't think there's too many unanswered questions, number one, to even give permission for a preliminary site plan. I'd make them answer all the questions. If you got to pay for engineering, let him pay for it. He's going to make $1 million, $2 million, $3 million. I don't know how much he's going to make, a lot of money. This is all about greed. You know that. All the houses on Eckford right now face Eckford. They don't face some roundabout turn. They got houses built in the middle of the Houghton Drain. I'm not sure how that's going to work, but they'll figure that out. The thing, one thought I could give you a million reasons why this is dumb. It's not fair to us who live there on the Stevenson subdivision. That I'd just like to leave you with one thought. I'd like you all to vote as if this monstrosity was in your front yard, not mine. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Next member of the public like to speak? Be sure to sign in, and Mr. Savinet will not start the timer until you start speaking.
Evening. My name is Brad Sermon. I'm a resident of Eckford. I've been there about 5 years. Want to be respectful of the mission of this commission is not to approve or deny anything. It's simply make a recommendation or against a recommendation to the city council for a later time. But I want to give you a perspective of someone who is a resident on the street, and I agree with all the comments from the residents that were made before me. I'm not particularly opposed to any development there or opposed to the developer specifically requesting the petition. But I think the cluster is not the correct type of development for our particular street. It doesn't fit within the homes. As I mentioned before, most of the homes are on at least an acre, and now you want to potentially cram between 21 and 26 homes into an area that's less than 9 acres. If it was 9 homes or 10 homes on that same parcel, that would make much more sense. But then again, that wouldn't go fitting with the type of home that a baby boomer would be looking for, so I can respect that. The drainage is going to be another issue. I've only been there 5 years, and I have had significant problems with drainage on my property. There are no storm drains in the rear of the property. They're all up towards the street. Most of the homes slope, most of the property slope to the rear into the woods. I put tens of thousands of dollars into attempting to solve my drainage issue last year, and it did not work. It made it marginally better. There's a lot of talk about building homes above grade of the 100-year floodplain. Since 2016, Oakland County has experienced 2 500-year rain events. So I don't know that that's going to be successful in building in an existing drain, floodplain, and floodway. My particular concern is with the increased traffic. If we increase homes by 75% in that area, it's going to dramatically increase traffic, partially because it's a cut through between Rochester Road, which is a main artery, and the Leonard Elementary, where both of my daughters go. What's interesting, if you sit on a driveway there and plug into any GPS system in your car, or Waze, or Apple Maps, or Google Maps, no matter what your destination is, even if going down the dirt road to Livernois is the faster geographic option, it doesn't present that in the app. It doesn't recognize that. If that were paved and there were 26 more addresses or 21 more addresses on there, that would, my assumption would be, allow a lot of non-residents to discover that shortcut and cut through from Rochester to Livernois. As Randy mentioned before, there are no sidewalks there. If my kids want to ride their bike or my family wants to take a walk after dinner, we have to walk on the road, which is okay now. There are only 35 homes there. But as I mentioned before, you have an 800-meter space between Tallman Drive and Rochester Road, and to add 75% more homes there, my feeling would be it would be disastrous not only for the current residents, but also the proposed residents of this development. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person, come on up.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Talal Keikos. I'm a resident on Eckford Street, and I'm at the beginning of the street, so I feel the concern of all the rest of the residents that are closer to the property. But my daughter right now takes the bus to school off of 901. That's where the bus picks up the kids. 4 other children are there that take the bus, and right now, just with the limited number of homes, there's too much traffic that goes back and forth into the street. And every day, every morning, it's a prayer to make sure that these kids get on the bus and then come back in the afternoon safely. And now to almost double the traffic on that street, I have a huge concern, what's going to happen to these kids as they're waiting for the bus or are walking and what have you with no sidewalks. And to double the traffic on that street, that's heartless. I think right now, so hopefully everyone can take that into consideration, at least for the children that have no choice but to stand on that street to take the bus to go into school and being dropped off. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Next member of the public, come on up.
My name is Bob Cage. I live at 718 Eckford, which is right kitty corner off the southeast side of that property is where mine starts on the other side of the road. I own almost 4 acres. And I just went to the city, talked to some lady, and asked her if I couldn't put a road back and put houses like that on my property, and she said I can't do it. So my concern is, why can they do that here? I guess other than we get the City of Troy Bob Cage rules, which we got for a lot of things. And my one other question is, if the builder, developer, whoever said he would pave the road from the frontage on their property, that's going to leave 450 feet from the corner down to where the blacktop ends. Who's going to foot that bill? We voted against paving the road because of the traffic, even though it is a chuck-hole city. But, so I don't want to get stuck for paying half of that. And my 5 neighbors, or 4 neighbors actually, paying the rest of it. So, and one other thing is, if they do okay all this, are they going to blacktop the road after they're done building? Or are they going to blacktop it before and tear it all to hell before they get the building done? Excuse my French. Thank you.
Thank you. Next member of the public, come on up.
Hi.
Good evening. Good, how are you?
Okay, I did not plan on talking, so I don't like talking out loud to people. But I live at 914 Eckford. I've lived there on and off since 1986. My parents first built the house. My father walked in, saw the lot, saw the trees, loved it. My parents went and built a house. Unfortunately, my father passed, and I've taken over the house. But I have a dog, and we go for walks down the street. Again, we do not have a sidewalk. People use Rochester Road as a cut-through. You know, they come through Rochester Road, they speed through to get through to Livernois. They don't want to make that. Years ago, when you were on Long Lake, you can make a left-hand turn. You can't do that anymore. You have to do that Michigan left. So they cut through there. And people do not slow down. I mean, I've trained him now that when he sees a car, he heels. Because they do not slow down. They may or may not go around you. So if what he's proposing is increasing the traffic, increasing the people, so it's not going to work out well. I mean, if this was your neighborhood and you have this many people coming up and down your street, full speed, would you want them there? Would you? Yes? No?
We can't answer your question because this is your opportunity to speak.
Oh, so you're just, okay, you're just looking, yeah, so, yeah, I'm just asking you not to approve it. I have no issue with them developing the land. Years ago, the previous owner, he had horses, he had llamas, so it's nice, you could walk down the street and see them. But I understand the average house has like an acre, so maybe 9 houses, 8 houses, but my God, not 26. Not 26, that's just too much traffic, you know. So that was it. I just want you to think about it and realize that people, like again, we don't have sidewalks. So I walk my dog sometime, I end up going around on Tillman because they have a sidewalk. And I should not really have to leave my street to walk down Rochester Road or drive to get to a sub where my dog can walk on the sidewalk safely. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
You too. Next member of the public would like to speak.
Thanks. My name is Mitch Stepke. I'm at 870 Eckford. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. And my wife would say I can't keep any comments under 3 minutes, so I will do my best, and I've economized on what I had to say because others have covered it. So first off, I don't like the fact that we just poo-poo the environmental element as insignificant, because we keep doing that, and eventually it just goes away. We did that on the other side of Leonard when we took that environment and created some larger retention pond because drainage was bad there. So I just want to say, on behalf of the environment, the species of turtles and all the other animals that live in that creek and that drain that are there right now, we got to just stop getting rid of it and pay into a fund so somebody else can deal with it. I would say this, when I looked at the master plan, it says R1A through R1E districts are further intended to preserve and improve upon quality of residential neighborhoods. Well, this doesn't do either. I mean, everybody's asked you, would you want this in your neighborhood? And I know you can't ask, but just say this builder came to your block, took down a few houses, increased the population by 75 to 100%, and increased the cars going up and down your little quarter-mile street by 50. I mean, if you figure 2 cars per household, 2 people in a house, that's 52 cars on our little side street. You know, most of these developments, the multifamily developments, have direct access to main roads, and they're separate. It goes to Rochester, Livernois, Wattles, whatever. This is unique. This is a small road, what, 200, 250 yards from an elementary school. I would say, look, you wouldn't want that in your neighborhood. You would not even allow it to be voted on. The developer would not want to go to home and have some other developer build this kind of a thing around their house yet, because they don't live in our area. You're not on our street. It seems to be fine. And I would suggest vote with your conscience and say, look, make a recommendation that preserves our rights rather than somebody filling their pocketbook at our cost. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public that'd like to speak? Come on up.
Could I ask you to put that slide up that showed the wetlands?
Did you drop off the flash drive?
I brought that to you.
Is this what you want up there?
Oh, no, as soon as I make a comment about this.
Okay,
And
so so I haven't loaded that up yet, so.
Okay.
Once you've commented,
Good, thank you very much. My name is Rhonda Jewell. I am that house that abuts the property on the east side of this development. So I did make my notes because I'm a little nervous about coming up through with this. Or you've got the wetlands pictured on the back of that. I was actually in my yard the day the fellow was walking that property, and he was over into my yard. I wish everyone here could walk that property. That doesn't really give a true reflection of the amount of water that is in that back part, and you'll see that in one of my pictures. Also, the llamas and the horses that he mentioned, they're all buried in there. They would shoot them and when they needed to pass and bury them. They would let us know they were going to shoot them, gun would go off, and you'd hear the tractor start up. Anyways, thank you for giving us the opportunity to discuss our concerns with the planned development entitled Troy Eckford Woods. My name is Rhonda Jewell, and my lot is located adjacent to the east side of the proposed property development. I'm sorry, Brent, could you put the pictures up? And I apologize, these pictures are my pictures, but it'll give you an idea of what we've all been talking about.
so I just stopped the clock because it's going to take me a couple seconds to get this up, so.
Thank you very much. I was
Just
trying
want to be fair to your time.
home.
Now, there's a bunch of images here.
Yep, the very first one is probably the most important but if you could just continue showing them as I'm talking, that would be great. Oh, we missed the first one, I think, but any event, as he goes through them.
Well, let's get your image up here.
Okay, that's our street. That's what we've all been talking about. For those of you that have not had an opportunity, and I appreciate very much that someone did take the opportunity to drive there, that is my property east to Rochester Road. That is in comparison to also on the west of my property. My husband and I looked for property to build a home for well over a year. Early in our search, we came across this property. I immediately contacted the realtor and found the property was already in the purchase process with another buyer. Disappointed, however, I left my contact information with the realtor and asked that if she came across another listing that compared with this one, to let me know. It was a year later that she called me stating that the property was back on the market. We made an offer the next day, which they accepted. That was 34 years ago. The pictures that will be shown are a representation of my home, however, are also a representation of the homes and the character of those that live on what has been known as the gravel road section of Eckford Drive. I refer to it as our neighborhood as my sanctuary. As I understand that the former owners, which the Zooks, had the right to sell the property, which is now owned by a developer, my hope, as I am sure is the same for most of those here tonight, is that we would like all measures taken to not destroy the character of this area. In 1968, my parents moved our family to Glenmore Estates in Troy. One of the many advantages that made living in Troy so desirable was the character of the neighborhoods and the many wooded areas. Although we all understand and appreciate growth, at what point is there enough development? This does not only apply to this property, but also to the many pieces of property that are in the city where the property has now been clear-cut. We have all heard about the replacement procedure if a tree is removed. I, for one, am not educated on the procedure and would like to know what credentials the individual had when rating the trees to be removed on this property. On this property, you will see that there are trees that may be 200 to 300 feet tall or more. It'll be generations until a replacement tree, which are less than 8 feet, will mature to this level. Some of my questions and concerns are the following, and I'm sorry, I apologize for being redundant in a lot of this. Lot sizes are not comparable with those in this.
Your 3 minutes are up, but I'll give you 2 more minutes since we're looking at the pictures, so we'll give you a little bit extra time there.
Lot sizes are not comparable with those in this area. Green space that is proposed on the south side, street side of this property, how are we assured that the homeowners would not try to remove trees and or brush that would be adjacent to their property? What measures will be taken to ensure that elevations are not changed, which would result in increased flooding around this property? Not sure what has happened, however, over the past few years, the property has a great amount of water retention that runs over into my property, and as you'll see in one of the pictures, my entire backyard was flooded. Can the green buffer space on the east and west end of the proposed development be increased to eliminate loss of privacy to adjacent property owners? I think there's just 2 of us that are just adjacent. Does the green buffer space include trees and brush? Can the number of proposed units be reduced to eliminate building on the east and west ends of the property to avoid disturbing existing property owners, which would also increase the lot sizes? Can the proposed units to be built on the east end of the property be restricted to 1 story to eliminate loss of privacy with adjacent property owner? Eckford Drive was not fully asphalted years ago as the previous property owner, the Zooks, voted against the proposal, and due to the size of their property and the number of votes they were allocated resulted in partial completion. Eckford Drive is only approximately 50% asphalt from Rochester Road going west. If the developer has included asphalting the street adjacent to this property, what happens to the middle section of the 5 existing lots, 5 owners? Many, if not all, are retired individuals that may not be able to pay an assessment for asphalting or even want this to happen. This property is home to hawks, eagles, and deer, to name some of the wildlife that we all enjoy. This development will destroy that wildlife. Eckford Drive is already used as a cut-through from neighboring subdivision or from those traveling from Livernois to Rochester Road, except when the road is...
Your time is up.
No problem.
All right. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to, Mrs. Jewell was reading, so I just want her to know, I scrolled through all your photos twice, and then I put up the one with flooding, and it's been on the screen for over a minute, so just so you know.
I have no idea, but that's been the last couple years that's been happening.
Thank you for the
Here's your
photos,
flag. Come get your flag. I'll bring it to you.
Oh, I'll get it from you after, Brent.
Better get it from him now. He might forget, so you better get it now.
He's been very nice.
Okay.
It's been helpful.
Anyone else from the public like to speak? Come on up, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Ronald Eng. I live at 749 Eckford. I'm 2 houses away on the north side to this development, next door to Jan. I agree with all the comments that we've been hearing this evening. I just want to stress on three of them. Again, about the storm drainage. It is a major concern of mine, and flooding, as Jan mentioned, we have had flooding in our backyard. Even though there is a whole line of storm drains at the very back of our property that lines against the DPW and into the EP, they back up, and we had water flood down probably halfway down into our property from that drain backing up. Also, in the ditches in the front of the property along Eckford, those things, as mentioned too, get quite full and almost overflowing when it rains. So that is a major issue, and I am concerned what this development will cause to that area. Number two, in regards to the traffic, one thing you also have to factor in is a development that's planned from Mundarin on the north side of Eckford. I don't know how many homes or clusters they're planning, but that's in addition to the proposed 26. So that, again, excessive speeding, the concern with children and just walkers, of which we walk a lot on our street, and we enjoy the view of the dirt road, like bring back memories of being up in Glen Arbor. But the traffic backup at the Rochester traffic light, along with just the danger of all the cars on there, especially with the backup, with so many people now driving kids to the Leonard Elementary, this Tallman is now backed up with traffic and people. Just back on the storm drainage, just one thing to consider is the retention pond that's next to Leonard had to be totally renovated because of development that was done on Latonia when they added the homes near Livonia, near Livernois, which caused flooding on homes on Tallman. So almost a mile away, it caused flooding, and they had to go in and completely redo that retention pond. And then lastly, I think one of you were just asking about the amenities that this development will provide and what people will see with the DPW. Living where we live, we also have to deal with a lot of the noise 24/7 from the DPW, from the beeping sounds of all their heavy moving equipment and trucks. Some of those homes, especially the ones in the corners, are going to be much closer, and it is noisy. You can't leave your windows open at night. So that's, we have noise pollution that does come in from DPW. So thank you.
Thank you. Yep, okay. Come on up.
Good evening. Hi, everyone. My name is Caitlin Ryder. I've also brought my father with me tonight. His name is Jeff Ryder. And I know and I appreciate that all of you have been hearing us. This is a long night for you. You've gone through a lot. But to echo the statements of my neighbors, I walk my dogs down the street with Mr. Eng. I see Miss Jewel all the time. We are people that live on this street and that have been there for a long time. I'm 34 years old. This was my grandparents' house that I live in. I live kitty corner to the proposed development. My father moved in when he was 15 years old in 1968. It really is a rural kind of haven within the city of Troy. And I echo the statements of my neighbors that I'm very concerned about the level of traffic. Most of my neighbors probably don't know me by my name, but they know me by my dogs and I walking up and down the street. And I would be very concerned at adding up to 52 additional cars going up and down our road. Children, pets, people with strollers and walkers using the street. It could significantly add to the danger that we experience. The other thing is that it is just our little space within Troy. I sit on 2 1/3 acres. As others have mentioned, 1 acre lots, I think we would all understand, being that it would be in keeping with the street. That's really what we're asking for. I would love for people who are baby boomers or otherwise elderly to have a space here. That's what my grandparents have and what I bought from them when they passed away. So I think that we want to have space for everyone in the neighborhood. We just want it to be safe and to be in keeping with what we already have. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
My name's Marge Kwalik, and I live at 850 Eckford. And I've been there since 1974, moved in did know about drainage problems back then. They think it's bad now. It was really bad then. But they did put in the Red Run drain, which helped alleviate a lot of that. Now, I want you to think about this. You blow up a balloon, you set something on it, what happens to the air inside? That's what's going to happen with the drainage problem when they put all these properties onto that field there. It's going to drain out, seep, and it's going to come all back to where we are. I'm not getting any younger. I even probably surpassed you. I had to pay flood insurance at one time. Can you guarantee I'm not going to have to pay it again? Because I think that's what will happen to our properties. We'll all be back into that flood zone because this seepage is going to place us there. I'm not a builder. I'm not anyone that's got any kind of thoughts on this, but I do know I love it there. I'm blessed to be on that road in Troy, blessed to have all the years that I've had, and I appreciate all that's being done for us, but I want you to think about what we have, what we moved in for, what we've stayed there for, and what we've tried to preserve on that street. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public like to speak? Come on up.
Good evening, all. I live at 650 Eckford, as does my wife. We are directly across the street from a good chunk of the land in question. Shooting from the hip here, I would say that the eastern end of that property extends perhaps another 50 feet beyond the boundaries of where we are. Our total frontage on Eckford is 225 feet. And we've been there for some 3 decades, so we've witnessed the changes. What Ms. Kowalik said pertained to us as well, that at one time we were actually on a floodplain. We're very happy that there was a change in ruling because there was a diversion put in, as I understand it, that redirected some of the floodwater. But I think we're asking for the same problem all over again if we go with this all-ambitious plan to put that many houses in that small a space. If the 45% guideline applies here, that is truly beyond my wildest imagination. And I'm drawing from, I know this is a long time ago, but when we bought the place, the salesman, realtor told us that, well, look at this, you know, not only do you have a nice property, but you could split it into 4 lots under the Subdivision Act. Mercy. Had I known that 4 lots could actually become something closer to 16 lots, I would have bought it twice, you know. But so you've heard many of the arguments, if you can call it that, for not having it, and water, or not having the full Monty of 26, excuse me, 26 home sites. So I am sympathetic to developers. I've never been one myself. I was in the building trade at one time, and I know that, you know, they have a living to earn too, and it's not like I want to put the whole kibosh on this thing and say, no, 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 keep it the way it always was. But I have somewhat of a more of a meet in the middle inclination here to say that, okay, times are changing, you know, but why don't we try to do what's tenable and not what's starry-eyed pie in the sky? When I heard this gentleman say earlier this evening that the tops of the basement floors would be above the floodplain, boy, I'd take that bet, you know, just knowing what I've known, what I've observed over the years. All right, now as for the traffic, 75% more, okay, yes, that's part of it. But the other part of it is this. If they pave that stretch, that drag strip straightaway is going to be more seductive.
If you can wrap it up here.
Yep, okay. Which means that we will not only get 75% more traffic, but we will get now the extra, grease the skids effect of having pavement where there used to be gravel. And that will, along with the environmental impact of Troy being the city of tomorrow today, I think it's kind of out of step with these times when we are all asking what is the environmental impact of so many humans. And perhaps we should be a little bit forward thinking in our approach to stay in step with what the trend is overall in this world. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else from the public like to speak? Come on up.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I've been on Eckford at 273 Eckford, which is not on the Eckford, we called it Old Eckford. But I've been there since the early 80s. And the traffic that you've heard about, I think it'd be prudent to at least ask for a impact study, traffic impact study. Because there's been little said about this development being just to the north of Leonard Elementary. And if you've ever been at Leonard Elementary at 9 o'clock in the morning or at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the traffic is incredible. And it is a race course. I've been there, like I said, since the early 80s. And the traffic, there is no traffic signal of any kind, no stop sign between Rochester Road and Livernois. And it's a hazard. We've even looked at trying to get something to stop the traffic because invariably somebody's running late, either to drop somebody off at school or to pick somebody up. And it's got to be taken into consideration. I mean, just send a team out there to do some traffic studies and take a look at it because it's going to be a safety issue. And I think, again, it would be prudent to do a impact study. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public that would like to speak now?
Hi, my name is Cheryl Kappas, and I do live at 501 Eckford. Lots 1 and 2 will be my driveway. I'm that house that my husband already spoke about. What you don't know on the traffic part of it is once they come down the street driving 50 miles an hour or more, there's a curve just past my house. My neighbor has no lawn on that curve because people slam on their brakes. You can hear them screeching. I've seen people come around that turn, almost land in my front yard. That's why I've got a rock at the end of my driveway. I've seen people in the ditch up near towards Rochester Road. It's incredible. I can't even explain. I work from home now, so I do see all that traffic at Leonard Elementary with the kids picking up. You can't get any vehicle down between. They've got both sides of the street, people picking up and dropping off. You can't get your vehicle down there. You can't pass them. They will turn in front of you. They run the stop sign that's right there at the corner of Tallman and Eckford. They don't care. So for them to be able to put that development there, if they want to put 9, that's great. I'm not opposed to that. But 26 is that's poor. Thank you.
Thank you. While Mrs. Kappas is signing in, does anyone else like to speak to the commission? Come on up while she's putting her address down. Good evening.
Hello, I'm Ann Warlick. I live at 845 Eckford Drive. I'm about 8 houses from Rochester Road. I have 2 children, 13 and 9. Definitely agree with the traffic issue. I almost wanted to talk our bus driver into coming because daily we have to guard the areas around the bus. And because people just pass the bus, I'm sure you've heard stories, but there's just too much going on. And to put this type of subdivision or whatever it's called, literally at the intersection where the streets meet and the elementary school is located, I just can't even imagine it because the cars are backed out onto Tallman 2 times a day. If there's a PTO meeting, there's just so much congestion right at that area. And beyond everything else, it kills me that there's just so many animals there. Like, so many deer, there's skunks, there's raccoons, there's coyotes, everything. Even all the animals that live in the drain. The Germans know there used to be like, oh gosh, what did they tell me? Water, just everything. The kids play down in the creek. I don't understand how you're building all of this over the Houghton Drain, which is our creek, and where do they go? I mean, where are all the animals supposed to go now? With the acre yards, I can walk out into my yard and there are deer laying in the back, baby fawns. I came home from the grocery store the other day. I threw a whole bag of apples out there. I mean, that's why we moved here, not for this. And I just can't look myself in the face if I didn't come up here and say all of this because we're killing it all. I mean, we're removing the drains and we're removing trees and planting new ones. What about the owl that I have in my yard that lives in one of these trees? Like, where do they go? So I totally agree with everything everyone said. Our drain is always flooded when it rains, and I'm not talking about just when there's heavy rains, like all of the time. There's still water in our backyard. It's horrible. We can't walk back there. Our children can't play sports. It dries up in the summer, obviously. I can't even imagine the effects that this is going to have. So fine, 9 houses, cool. I get it. We just have to put some thought into it, and definitely we need to hear how the wetlands were going to be preserved. So those are my thoughts. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public who'd like to speak?
Good evening. My name is Irish German, resident of Troy at Eckford for 42 years. I grew up in the neighborhood. I rode my bike down the street. And I have very big concerns, public safety concerns. There were 3 near-miss incidents on Eckford during bus stop times. One incident, one lady almost ran one of the kids over. Thankfully, a grandparent had jumped in front of the car. The car almost proceeded to go through the bus at a stop as the kids were walking. Broad daylight, 4 in the afternoon. Another incident, car speeding. They slowed down for whatever reason. I think they saw us and they swerved. It was icy, it was snowy. They were going at a high speed and almost flipped around on the street. Same exact incident happened right after they had passed us too. 3 different incidents. You bring 75% more homes, population into our neighborhood. What are the percentage of the risk to our children at the bus stop? We have, I know we talked about the drain issues. My mother had built this house. We had engineers come out and assessed all the drains and the flooding. This is, can I step over?
Sure.
This is the Houghton drain on a summer day. And that's our house. All our house was engineered. Everybody had seen and built.
So that we can make sure your voice is in the recording, just show us the pictures and do your speaking from the mic there. We want to make sure we record everything you're saying.
Make sure you send that to Mr. Zeppo, so he can be part of it.
Just for the record, Mr. Chairman, the speaker showed an illustration with some flooding in the photograph.
That'll go into the record, so thank you.
Maybe 8 feet from our house is the Houghton drain. As you can see, it looks more like a Houghton lake. So I ask you, keep in mind the public safety and our children's safety. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public that would like to speak? Going once? Anyone else? With that, we will close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for either resolution or questions of staff. Anyone have anything that they would like to offer at this time? Yes, Ms. Parakas.
Yeah, I mean, I was concerned. I think hearing all the residents brings a lot of concerns for me. I'm not even sure where to begin. I guess one question I have for the city, for the planning department is, you know, sometimes we come in here and we do have traffic studies provided. So at what point are we permitted to request a traffic study?
When this was circulated internally for review, the city engineer did not feel like a traffic study was warranted for 26 units on 8.7 acres at this location.
Okay.
If the planning commission feels like a traffic memo, if a majority of you feel like a traffic memo is warranted, you can certainly request a traffic memo.
Okay. I mean, I'm familiar with traffic studies, and I don't know that they would resolve that there was a concern, but hearing virtually all the residents on the street tell us of the traffic issues, I'm convinced that there's already too much traffic. Can we clarify also about the dirt road? It was vague to me. It wasn't clear. Is it going to be paved? Is it an option? Are we requiring that road to be paved? Who's paying for it? Is it the entire thing?
The requirement is that the property the road that the property fronts on, trying to think of a way to say it, the road that the property fronts on is to be paved at the expense of the developer, not the residents.
But who wants, is the city requiring it to be paved?
Yes.
They are?
Yes.
Okay. So there's going to be a section on either end, it sounds like, of unpaved that's going to remain dirt road?
Potentially, yes.
Okay. At what point do we spend time, I don't know how to phrase it, but getting assurances from the developer about the storm drainage system? Because, you know, the zoning ordinance has many, many provisions requiring that the drainage issue is dealt with. And I've seen a lot of evidence to show that there's already drainage issues, so I don't know how this development would impact that.
So it's common knowledge that we got a lot of rain the last few years. One of the speakers indicated, you know, significant storm events, which is true, back to back, you know, piling on each other, and you know, the weather has been pretty brutal the last few years. I'm not a civil engineer, so but I will say that the city engineering department is aware of some of the challenges, and this may be an opportunity to fix some of the problems that exist in this area or that are caused by, you know, what's going on this property, and it may be an opportunity to improve what's there today. Again, I'm not a civil engineer, but there have been developments where the developers have improved upon, you know, the situation that residents are dealing with. That is something that I would hope the engineering department would consider. The developer sitting here, he can relay this to his civil engineer, and the goal is not to impact the people that are here this evening. That is not what, you know, our engineering department is here to protect the people in this room.
Correct. And our job as well as planning commissioners is to ensure that we're protecting the residents as well, because the zoning ordinance requires that we protect the neighbors. So, you know, I'm not a civil engineer either, so that's what makes it difficult, I guess. You know, I've always now I'm just going to comment to the rest of you, my fellow planning commissioners. You know, I've always had a bit of an issue with these cluster developments that have come before us because I understand the intent, I understand why the zoning ordinance provides for it, but a lot of times the applications that come in are based on properties that already have an encumbrance on them where they can't really build on them anyway, and then the zoning ordinance actually gives them a bonus so they can cluster and actually put more density. I thought the purpose was to create the open space, but in this particular case, and in a lot of the cluster developments I've seen since I've been on the commission, they already have significant areas that can't be built on. And in this case, the drain that comes through, the creek, and the wetlands, which make it very difficult and costly to the developer to develop. So, on the flip side, you know, I'm hearing everyone's concerns, and I get that people want the 9-acre strips with 9 houses that front the street. But unfortunately, I hope you all understand that the developer can make this road by right and put the 21 houses, or I think, yes, the 21 houses, arguably, because a few of them look like they're in the drain. But anyway, so it's going to have that impact. So I do recognize that and think that the cluster could work and benefit. I guess I have one other question that maybe somebody can help, and maybe some of the images can help me understand, because when I drove by, I wished I could get out of my car and walk into that area, but the way that the developer has proposed the cluster development, there's really just 3 houses that front on Eckford. It's, you know, these 3 right here, unit 25, 26, unit 1 and 2, I suppose. Can anyone give me an idea of how many feet are from Eckford to the rest of the houses? How much space are we talking about? I mean, is it 20 feet, 50 feet, 100 feet, 200 feet? Do you know what I'm talking about? Eckford to the rest of the houses, that road of houses.
To the houses north of...
24, 23, 22, 21, 20, 19.
To the front door?
Well, it's their back door. It's their back patio. No, not to their front door. To the house.
I can measure it for you. Just give me a couple minutes. I'll measure it for you.
Okay, I mean...
I have the plans here. I can measure it for you. Just give me a
Mr.
second.
Tagle says 100 feet is his guesstimate.
About 100 feet.
Less than that.
All right. While he's checking that, Mr. Faison, did you have a comment or a question?
I had a question. So we heard consistently about the flooding. So Brent, and I appreciate your comments about the property and how it can impact the neighbors. But does our analysis, or will our analysis, take into account the trend toward severe weather events that seem to be pervasive, like that it may not be an aberration? Or, you know, is there some recency to the analysis of the potential for flooding, and then so that the mitigation would potentially be greater than it was, I don't know, in the past?
Do you want to have the petitioner answer that question?
Sure, anybody who can. Okay. Yeah.
So remember that we have a regional detention basin that 4 developers have agreed, and the cities actually came to us and said, hey, we'd like to do this, what do you think? So under most normal developments, what really happens is right now, where's all the water going right now? It's just all essentially going to the Houghton Drain, right? We all agree it's going there right now at this point. In a normal, typical development, what would happen is we would dig a pond on the site and outlet that pond to the same place, to the Houghton Drain. And the idea behind the pond is to make the water only go in the drain as fast as it is now, not any faster. In this case, we're actually taking the drainage that's going to be on those lots, the roads, the lots, the houses, and we're taking it away from the Houghton Drain. We're actually piping it in that pipe that's going up to the regional detention basin, and that's outletting, I think, there's a major drain that's that runs north of the property through the city's property, and they're going to outlet to that, I believe, is where it's going to go. So we're actually reducing the total amount of water that's going to the Houghton Drain. We're actually taking it off. It's an unusual situation, but that's what's happening here.
How do you analyze the capacity for that new drain? Like, how do you know the capacity for that is sufficient for weather events that are consistent with what we've had in the recent past?
Are you talking about the existing Houghton Drain?
No, the one that you're talking about, the
detention facility.
The detention facility, that you're not going to increase the water going to the Houghton Drain. The water.
Reduce it. We're actually going to reduce it.
Right. So my question is, how do you know the capacity for the alternative that you have is sufficient for severe storm events?
Designed by, actually, a consulting engineer that'll be retained by the city, I believe, will actually design it. And I don't recall.
HRC is the company.
Yeah, and I don't recall what they put in.
I guess and maybe it can't be answered. My question is, if recent severe events continue, is that part of the analysis of the capacity for the drainage and the flood mitigation?
Yeah, I'm not a civil engineer. I can't answer that.
Okay. Understood. Understood. And then I have one more question,
Mr. Cagle had something along that line, then we can go back to you.
The engineers are going to design it per the current standards, which is a 100-year storm. Until the rules change and take into consideration a 500-year storm, they won't be designing to. Now, they could consider it, but how much more will they enlarge the pipes to accommodate the bigger event? I don't know. For right now, it's my understanding that the engineering community, civil engineering community, is designing towards what is required to be designed to, which my understanding is a 100-year storm. To move that bar up, if you will, to design it for a larger event, again, it's certainly not a developer's responsibility. It's a community or a county's responsibility to investigate.
No, agreed. My question was more, you're answering my question. So it's going to be designed more for the history than the very recent past.
And
that was my question.
When that first started, that was a big step from what it was before. We weren't seeing beyond the 100-year storms that we're starting to see now.
Can I mention a couple of other things that are probably recent additions? It was only a few years ago that they designed for a 10-year storm. It might even be still a requirement in the city, I can't remember, but now it's a 100-year storm. The other thing they've done is they've started adding some additional safeguards. Like they require that there be something called a foot of freeboard designed so there's additional capacity in the basin above the 100-year storm before it would overtop. And then when they have it overtop, meaning that it floods over the top side, the top of the bank of the basin, they actually have to design a route where that water can go so that it just doesn't flood everything all over the place. So you hear the major things like, oh, now it's a 100-year storm, but there's all these incremental pieces that go into it that also increase the capacity of what's being done. And it'll be probably looked at by a whole bunch of engineers. The county's going to look at it, the city's going to look at it, the city's consultant's going to look at it, who's, unlike the developer's consultant, is going to be more concerned about safety and what the city wants versus the developer's consultant, meaning ours being complying with the minimum requirements of the ordinance kind of thing. So I think there's going to be a lot more safety there than you would have if you had an on-site detention basin.
Thank you. I just have one.
Before you go on, I know Mr.
Mr.
Savidan had something to bring up, and then we'll go back to you, Mr. Faze.
Yeah, Mr. Michael stated what I was going to state. Our stormwater detention standard has increased within the last, I think, year and a half, 2 years, to a 100-year storm event. It was, like Mr. Taylor said, it was significantly less until about a year and a half, 2 years ago. So the county has recognized, some of the challenges that we're facing, and the standard has increased significantly as a result of that.
Okay. Mr. Faison, did you have something more you had to ask or comment?
I had a completely different question.
Why don't you do that, then we'll go back to Mr. Carlisle, who had an answer to Ms. Parakis' question.
Okay. A lot of comments about the traffic and the safety, right? And it seems like the developer is responsible for paving the road in front, with the frontage of their development. But the issues of no traffic no stop signs, no traffic control, no sidewalks. How do those get addressed if a development like this is approved and there's significantly more traffic and it becomes an issue with safety?
So, I guess I don't really understand your question.
So
this is a residential street that does not have sidewalks presently.
Correct.
If this application is approved, the city is not going to construct sidewalks on both sides of this street connecting all the way to Rochester Road and connecting Rochester to the school. That's not going to happen. It will remain a street with no sidewalks.
And with the gravel in between the two?
Potentially, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Now, is it conceivable that the city recognized that there's two areas where there's not there's a not very lengthy areas where there's gravel, and could the city, potentially pave those sections? That's possible. But remember, this is preliminary site plan review. We're not into engineering yet. This is the preliminary stage but the residents here this evening aren't going to pay for the paving.
Okay. And the city's not going to pay for the paving. That was my question. Yeah.
I don't believe so.
Right. Okay.
Mr. Carlisle, you had an answer for Ms. Parakis on the distance.
Yes, so if you follow my red line, that's approximately 160 feet. This is from this point to this point is approximately 300 feet. Does that answer your question, Ms. Parakis?
Yes, it does. So to the houses 22 through 19, we're talking maybe 180 feet.
I can't see, my eyes is terrible. Here?
Well, the sort of...
Up here?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is 160, I'd add, maybe 40 feet, 30 or 40 feet, so 180, 190 feet.
And the idea would be that that's the creek and all of the trees within that area would remain. So if that's over 100 feet of trees, most of those homes are sort of hidden by view from the average person walking down Eckford like it is now.
It's reasonable to assume that those trees would do a sufficient job, definitely in the summer and probably in the winter as well.
Oh, right, okay. Except for those 4 houses. Okay, thanks.
Ms. Malala-Holly.
I'm glad I got the answer before I asked the question. That was my question that I wanted to know. All the trees will provide the cover for not just the residents there, but also on to the street of the Eckford. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, just to go back on this slide, the area outlined in my poorly drawn yellow line is to be reserved as trees that would not be touched and will remain. So again, that's a significant 100 feet plus buffer from Eckford in this location.
Got it. Mr. Savidan, did I hear you correctly when you said the patches of the pavement that will not be paved by the developer might in the future be paved by the city, and the residents do not have to bear the cost of paving that?
That's my understanding. This is a unique situation. How many times has an application been before the Planning Commission on a gravel road? It doesn't happen very often, so this is a unique situation.
Now, I am guilty as charged. I know one time I got stuck on Rochester Road and the GPS rerouted me. That's how I got to know your street. It's a beautiful street. Unfortunately, I had to get somewhere, so I couldn't enjoy all the greenery that sat there, but I did go when this proposal came up, and again, I enjoyed driving on the gravel street, no doubt. Also, along with all the homes and the beautiful street. It is a beautiful street. It is very beautiful. My concern is the paving of the street will act as a blessing and a curse for the residents. And that is, this is a very similar issue as the residents were talking about it, that it brought back the memories of the condo or townhome, whatever combination of housing that was proposed on Sylvan Wood. And the same concerns were raised by the residents. And they not only just talked about traffic coming in and out of Rochester Road, getting into that area, but also Sylvanwood Drive being very, very similar to Eckford Street in terms of the fact that the houses sit on much larger acre properties, and they have a very rural appeal to them, although one or two homes today look pretty modern compared to the 1960s or the 1950s built there. I am very concerned about this project. To be very honest with you, I cannot see myself voting yes on a recommendation to the City Council, because for me, I feel, this is my personal opinion, too many homes are being packed in that area. I don't even understand the environmental impact. We are talking about climate change that is of a proportion and size that is unimaginable to us. And I do not know how in 5-10 years down the road this whole area is going to look. I know there is a detention pond that is being proposed and probably undertaken by the city pretty soon. I still can't see myself voting a yes on this one for the fact that this is sitting right where so much of environmental impact is going to be seen, and one that I don't think we have significantly done a good study of. Aside from the fact that this whole proposal, according to me, again, does not sit in line with the current existing homes there. As some of the residents pointed out, if it were a much lesser construction, yes, I could definitely see that even they being happy by not adding the traffic, by not worrying about their pets or their walking paths because they don't have a sidewalk, and worrying about the safety. And to be honest, since I have driven on those roads a couple times now, thanks to Google GPS showing me the shortcut between Rochester and Livernois, I now have also realized one more thing, and that is that curve there, as one of the residents pointed out, boy, if you don't know that there is a curve there, you can really go over some people's front lawn. I have seen that, and so I kind of felt that when I was driving 2 days ago. So my heart is not for a yes on this one. I guess I'm with the residents on this one. I just can't see myself voting for such a large development in this area. So that was my bid.
Mr. Beatner.
Mr. Savinon, a couple of questions for you, mostly. Drainage-wise, with this proposal, and I know it's just a preliminary, but would these designs help the flood issue, in your expert opinion?
Well, I really can't offer an expert opinion because I'm not a civil engineer, but generally speaking, in theory, this property minimizes the impact on the floodplain and on the drain, and also preserves a minimum of 160 trees. The alternative to this is the applicant comes back with a by right development that is a little bit less sensitive towards the environment, does more earth moving within the floodplain, and takes down all the trees and then selectively replaces the minimum number of trees that have to be replaced. There's been developers that have done that same type of thing. So I think this is comparing the two with 160 trees preserved, and again, like the survey indicated, a lot of these are quality trees and minimum impacts on the floodplain. From my perspective, not being a civil engineer, this seems to be the better alternative.
Okay. One of my other questions, and you answered my next question, I think, but are there any guarantees? And I believe him, and he's a knowledgeable man, but what do we have to guarantee that these guys won't have a flood in their basement a couple years from now?
Well, guarantees, I mean, we the city do the best we can to ensure that it's not impactful negatively on the residents. Guarantees, we have outstanding staff that are licensed professionals that are experienced and are really good.
And I've worked with you guys, and I agree with that statement. And I think you answered my other question is, do they have the ability to go cut it down a little bit more and launch this without asking for anybody's opinion? Is that correct? Is that what I heard you say?
Well, again, I'm trying to be factual. I'm not taking sides. and I don't want this to come across as adversarial or we're having a conversation here. But just remember, in terms of property rights, the zoning is a balance of property rights. The owner of this property has property rights. The neighbors have property rights. The person who's put an offer in on this property and wants to develop has property rights. And zoning is a balance of property rights. Now, this zoning ordinance provides options for development. Someone mentioned splitting. There's a Land Division Act that someone mentioned that allows someone, without having to go before Planning Commission, can come in and split this into approximately 4 lots and do 4 houses. That's a property right, splitting without having to go to Planning Commission. Another property right is to submit what's called an as-built layout, where the applicant does not have to go to City Council. They go before the Planning Commission for by right, which we showed 21, whether we debate it, whether it's 21 or 18. We talked about that. Their parallel plan shows 21. In theory, the developer could come before the Planning Commission with a site condominium that is not a one-family cluster, does not have to go to City Council, and could propose that with more potential impact. And then there's this one-family cluster development, again, another right for the owner and the developer, where they come in, they have to go before the Planning Commission at a public hearing, and then City Council for a public hearing, have to preserve at least 20% open space. In this case, it's 45% open space to pick up a commensurate bonus to get them from 21 to 26. So those are some options that are there based on property rights that are laid out in the zoning ordinance and other laws. It's a long-winded answer to your question, but I guess just for those watching on TV or attending here or the Planning Commission, that's what it comes down to. I understand the desire of the neighbors to 9 acres, 9 lots. I understand that. I empathize. I get it. In this instance, again, I mentioned it earlier, this has been zoned R1C, I think since 1955. I'm pretty close. The minimum lot size in R1C is 10,500 square feet per lot, which is about 4 units an acre. So the underlying zoning, again, getting back to property rights, is 4 units per acre. So that's probably, I'm not in the real estate business, but my guess is the owner of this property, who has property rights, I keep going back to that balance, looks at the resale value of this. They probably want to sell and move to Florida or Colorado, wherever. That value is based on something, and the law that we have, to the best of our ability to calculate that, is the underlying zoning ordinance, knowing that there's floodplains and wetlands on this property. So that's where the value of the property lands on is the number of lots based on the zoning. So, long-winded answer to your question.
That was the answer I was looking for. We're looking out for you guys. I'm voting no on it myself, but you guys bought a property and you've got some things that we just heard, I think, right here to figure out what could be worse and what could be better. And I empathize with you as a citizen as well. Thank you for answering those questions.
Mr. Tagle, did you have something?
Yeah, just a couple of thoughts. There's a drawing in the set here. It's called a grading plan, and it identifies the slopes of the properties. And it looks to me, now this is not an extensive plan, going eastward where people have noticed flooding in their backyard, but the water is draining from north to south, irregardless of what's on this particular parcel of property. And what the developer has said is going to happen, which I agree with, is that they are going to put in a storm system to capture any water coming off of the buildings or the pavement, and it's going to take it off this property, and it's going to take it to a retention pond. So it's going to really reduce the amount of runoff from this particular property. So, and again, this is all engineering, that they're going to have to look at this much more closely than through this preliminary process. And there are no guarantees. Water will find it's where it's going to go. But from what I'm seeing here, I think the problems east of the property as far as flooding in the backyard, it's looking like it's already there, that this property, even whether it's developed or left alone, there's still been flooding in those backyards, right? as far as the safety on the street, we've had developments before us, same types of discussions. No sidewalks, kids on the sidewalks, people driving too fast. I would offer a thought that the people driving too fast down your street are not your neighbors. There are people coming through, cutting through your subdivision. These 26 units are going to be your neighbors. And they are, can't guarantee, but I would doubt that they're going to be speeding down their own street. I would think that if you have in my neighborhood, if we find someone of one of our neighbors speeding down our street, we talk to them. We realize that this is dangerous. But my point here is, I don't believe that the problem is going to get worse because you're going to get 26 new neighbors or whatever, 26 new families coming down your street. I think the problem is still going to be there because A, there's no sidewalks, and B, it's a cut through. And people that just want to get from point A to point B in the quickest time they can are going to use that street. Are there ways to mitigate that or to reduce that? Sure. Put up some stop signs. Talk to the city about having stop signs. Have the police patrol the road more. You know, there are other ways to do that. There was one other thing I wanted to say, but I have lost that thought, so I will yield the floor.
We'll get back to you.
Mr. Krent, and then Mr. Hudson.
I wanted to ask the developer a quick question, if he could come up to the mic again. Regarding the parallel plan, did you do a calculation roughly how much open space would be left if you went the route of the parallel plan?
We did not. We just looked strictly at.
Can you give us a rough estimate?
Can somebody put it up in front of me? I don't know. Let's see. Those lots are, each one of those lots is a quarter of an acre, so there's probably an acre, a little over an acre, acre and a quarter maybe.
Okay, so the difference between this plan that you can build without approval from city council would allow for about an acre of open space, and with it going to council, you would get roughly how many acres?
3.5. It's 45% of 8.7.
Okay.
Close to 4, I guess 4, isn't it? Yeah, 4 acres. Sorry, I can't do math.
No, that's okay, good enough, I get the point. So basically, our decision to either approve or not approve this cluster, because all we're doing is approving a recommendation to council for a cluster, not for a development. It's just specifically for a cluster. Am I correct on that at this point?
It's a recommendation on what's submitted for review.
But it's for a cluster development.
That's correct.
Right. Not a by right.
Not a by right, no.
Okay. But if the developer would like to just do it by right, could you just let the audience know the process, what would happen?
The process would be a meeting of the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission would have the authority to approve a preliminary site plan for this type of development.
And now, if we approved it, it would go ahead, there's no council on it?
There's no council, no.
Okay, so that's our choice, Commissioner. If we were to not approve the cluster, which allowed, let's say, roughly 3.5 acres of open space, and the developer came back and said, fine, I'll make it 21 homes with 1 acre of open space, and we don't find anything in that plan that is against the ordinance, we approve it. So there's our choice.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Hudson, then you.
Yeah, I saw Mr. Hudson first, so go ahead.
Emotionally, and I'm in sympathy with what I hear from our neighbors on Eckford. It seems like an idyllic little spot in the middle of a hustle-bustle city that we haven't got much anymore. But my emotional feelings are not one of the factors the zoning ordinance says we must consider in reviewing this plan. So now we're left with a choice between a parallel plan and a cluster plan. And for my thinking, the parallel plan does more detriment to the wildlife and the neighbors of Eckford than the cluster plan. The animal is going to have a lot more room in that open space, which is called wet space, under the cluster plan. And I think, in my opinion, looking at it, the elements of the zoning ordinance, that we don't have much choice except for deciding that we don't like the cluster plan, which I think is a mistake. I think the cluster plan, under all the circumstances, is a much better plan for Eckford and for the city of Troy and its wildlife.
Mr. Rahman.
Okay. So obviously, I agree with Mr. Hudson about the cluster plan, and that's more compatible for normal terrain. It's not like what we are talking about is a specific type of situation where we have floodway, instead of flood, what do you call it? Yeah, floodway, floodplain, and also, the situation is totally different. So for a normal situation, I would say the cluster plan is definitely the way to go. But in this kind of situation, I don't think cluster plan would be suitable. Now, I will say a few reasons. Maybe I can just first talk about the compatibility, because one of the items that we have to look into, because if you look at the cluster plan's requirement, then we have to look into surrounding area and see what other things we have. And we only see large properties with small house, and this is going to be totally different. So I don't think it will be comparable when we have that. Next is the proximity to the floodplain, and that's where I am pretty bullish about it, because I live on Houghton Drain. I don't like to say drain, I call it creek, but if you guys say it, that's fine. It's kind of interesting that my friend, who's my neighbor, he was complaining about it. And I did not hear that complaint, that flooding situation. I did not hear about that. We've been living there for since 2004. We did not have that. It's a totally different area. It's not your neighborhood. The drain goes all the way through, Troy. So that's becoming a big problem. So I don't think that we have to consider that the proximity to floodplain. Obviously, this is the first time I'm seeing so many houses will be violating the zoning ordinance for setback, because we're building decks of like so many units. That's something we need to consider. Now, we talk about urban sprawl. And again, I've been living in Troy for almost 20 years. And this is the first time I went through this Eckford Road. That was yesterday. I was surprised. And during our neighborhood walk, we spoke with our neighbors, and they said that we want to retain the historic nature of Troy, if possible. I think this is one of the places, there are maybe a few others, but this is one of the places I definitely would like to keep that historic nature. So that's one. And I know that there is an ordinance where we can cut half of the trees, but still we get credit because we did not cut all of them. It's kind of weird, but I don't know. We probably have to change the ordinance, because we are cutting almost 2/3 of the trees, if I am not mistaken, right? But we are saving 1/3. That's why we don't.
About half. 50%.
Half. Okay. Either way, but these are all good trees. I don't know why would we want to do that. And then the cut through traffic, and we spoke about it a lot. Obviously, if we want to do anything, I want to do a traffic study, thorough traffic study, because what will happen is, now it's dirt road. I was driving my Grand Cherokee, so I liked it, I enjoyed it, but when I'm driving my BMW, I don't have one, but I'm just making it up, I wouldn't drive on that dirt road. So that means, when you pave it, there will be a lot more people will be driving through that, apart from those 72 houses or whatever we want to make. So, and then obviously so many trees will be lost. So I've been in the Planning Commission more than 3 years. I haven't seen that many problems in a submittal. So I definitely would say no to this. Thank you for the proposal. What I request you is come up with something which is comparable to the. Which you get right there. I know that, but that's the first thing that I didn't like about it is this parallel plan is not vetted, because there are a lot of floodplain or the lot of floodplain or some of the things that we have that we have to avoid that to come up with a parallel plan. So if we want to go with a parallel plan, I'm happy to see that, but then it has to be vetted. Because if you say that it is economically not feasible, that's not a parallel plan. So that's something that I don't know if I...
This is Planning Commission talking right now, so, okay.
So I definitely like to see the parallel plan, and then we can talk about it, because here, Planning Commission is here to see both sides, right? I mean, obviously we need to build, at the same time we have to look into the benefits of the neighbors who live there. So I don't think I have seen so many problems in a proposal, so I would vote no for this. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, as of right now, there's no resolution, so I'm not sure if you can vote no or yes or anything, but does someone wish to float a resolution now that I think everyone has had their questions answered?
And just to remind the audience and Planning Commission, you're a recommending body for this application.
I just want to say one quick thing. I like to, Mr. Savin, with full respect for your information, I would like to say that we don't want to undermine the recommendation by saying that repeatedly, because what happens is, I have seen in the past that when Planning Commission say yes, City Council is more like they take it as like a yes, and not too many questions asked after that. So yes, I know that Planning Commission is recommending body, but when you repeatedly say that, that means you are undermining the responsibility of the Planning Commission. This is just a comment. Thank you.
My intention isn't to undermine the Planning Commission whatsoever. Planning and zoning is complicated at the best of times. I just want people who took the time out this evening to attend this meeting, when they leave here, that don't think if you voted yes, that, oh, it's a done deal, or if they voted no, oh, it's killed. I want everyone here assured this is not the final step. I'm just merely trying to communicate to the audience.
And there has been occasions, I know when I was a relatively new member of Planning Commission, that the commission at that time voted in favor of a development which eventually City Council turned down. So it does happen where they will reject our recommendation. So, someone wish to float a resolution? Yes, Ms. Parakis.
Well, I mean, not yet, because I think that if there's going to be any resolution that goes forward, I mean, we haven't even talked about the, the zoning ordinance does say that in order to waive the setback requirement, they want a recommendation from the Planning Commission. And I just want to make sure, so it says the City Council, based upon a recommendation from the Planning Commission, may waive the front, side, rear, and perimeter setback provisions as set forth in 10.4E2, provided that the applicant has demonstrated innovative and creative site and building designs and solutions which would otherwise be unfeasible or unlikely to be achieved absent this provision. So we really should be talking about this if there's going to be any type of resolution at all. One of the issues I have is, we've got 35% of the properties are seeking a deviation. I would say that I appreciate the effort to target the senior community or people who are looking for ranch developments, but we've had many developers come before us and tell us they're offering ranches, but when you also offer a colonial, you're going to be able to find 26 people who come in and pay more for a colonial, and then there went all the ranches. So if anything, I think to fit into the innovative and creative, to give a reason for us to be complying with our own zoning ordinances, to waive it, I would argue that the creativity would come in requiring them all to be ranches. That would be my feeling anyway. I think you indicated maybe 2 or 3 that can't happen. We can talk about that if that's the case. I would also maybe consider eliminating this is the wrong image, but the image of the cluster plan, if you throw that up there, maybe eliminating the 4 houses that are on Eckford or close to Eckford also, to sort of at least create a separation. It would be 4 less properties. and might be a little bit more palatable to the neighbors, I'm not sure. But a resolution, I think, would need to have that caveat. That's just, I'm throwing that out there.
I can read a resolution if you want.
Go ahead, Mr. Krant.
Resolved, the Planning Commission hereby recommends to City Council that the proposed Eckford Oaks site condominium, one-family residential cluster, 26 units/lots, north side of Eckford, west of Rochester, parcels 88-20-15-275-016, 88-20-15-275-017, Section 15, approximately 8.7 acres in size, currently zoned R1. Why does it say B there? It should be C, right? It should be saying R1C. Okay. One family residential district be approved for the following reasons. The cluster development better protects the site's natural resources than if the site were developed not as a cluster. The cluster development better protects the adjacent properties than if the site were not developed as a cluster. The cluster development is compatible with adjacent properties. I want to add that the waiver for the decks along the north side, I would waive those setback requirements because it's adjacent to environmentally protected land and a city piece of property. That's why the cluster development is compatible with adjacent properties. The site can be adequately served with municipal water and sewer. The cluster development preserves 45% open space to remain open space in perpetuity. Be it finally resolved, the Planning Commission offers the following design considerations. Applicant shall indicate limits of grading to conform impact upon on-site wetlands and floodplains prior to the final site plan approval. And I want to add another one that the applicant shall indicate preservation of trees on properties 1 and 2 where they can be by using some creative drain mitigation around those trees' roots.
Just a comment, Mr. Chairman. You and the applicant spoke about him stipulating potentially a certain percentage of ranches. Should that be part of the resolution?
I was going to ask if that was permissible to include that as part of the resolution. So I believe he said 60% if he was willing to.
Okay, yeah, okay. And the applicant shall ensure that 60% of the homes built on this property will be ranch style.
And we also need an open space agreement as well with that resolution.
We need to make sure there's a provision for including an open space preservation agreement.
So we
Say that again?
An open space preservation agreement has to be part of the resolution.
And an open space agreement must be part of it's not just of this resolution, but of.
Prior to final, but it needs to be in this resolution.
Prior to final approval.
Prior to final approval, thank you. I hope you got that, Ms. Sarnecki. Yeah.
Before I take a second, I want to see if anybody wants to add anything to the resolution.
Just to clarify, and good catch on the typo, it is R1C, good catch. But you mentioned, I believe you said drain mitigation under the strip line of the tree. I think what you meant was like protection under the tree.
Yeah, it was water being drained in a creative way to avoid damaging root balls on some of the major trees that the applicant offered during his talk.
Okay.
Sorry, Ms. Sarnecki.
All right. Mr. Tagle.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about the distance from the road to the homes paralleling the north property line. And that by looking at the aerial, there are a number of trees in that space that is in the ditch area, the drainage plane, et cetera, et cetera. I think because of the regrading of that property, those trees might not last. So I think I'd like to add something to the resolution, that there be trees planted in the new grading that would buffer from the street to those homes or properties to the north. Because I think what's going to happen, there's a profile drawing in here that shows the existing grade and the new grade, and there is several feet difference. Any trees aren't going to be able to withstand that much of a change. So I would like to see if in fact that area is affected grade-wise, that would have to remove the trees, that some new trees would be planted in place of that.
Please add that, Ms. Zarnicki.
Any further additions to the resolution? Would somebody like to, did you have something, Ms. Parakis?
Well, I would just like to ask if you would change the 60% to 80% ranches.
What's the consensus here? Do we have a majority on that?
I would prefer that.
You prefer that?
Yeah, me speaking for myself.
Yes, yes. What do you think, guys? 60 to 80? Where are you going? Take your bets.
I just think, I've never heard anybody offer to stipulate ranches.
We're making a number.
At all before, so.
Let's split it. How about 70?
He did say 70%. He said 60 to 70%.
60 to 70 over there. Okay, I'll make it 70 on the resolution.
Okay.
Well, wait, he was gonna.
I'm trying to get my phone to do math.
Okay.
Can I ask?
Mr. Beekner, go ahead.
I just, if you don't mind, I want to ask a question about this. So I'm learning as we're going. I think you guys are learning as we're going. I'm hearing there's plan A and there's a plan B. And I'm a businessman and I'm in favor of some development, but I'm looking out for you guys for me sitting here. You got an A and a B is what I'm saying. Are we allowed to ask them if?
Not at this point, no.
We're not allowed to
We
ask.
close the public hearing.
It's either A or it's B, right? Is there a C? There's no C.
What do you mean by
One resolution being put forward on the cluster plan.
Plan A is cluster, plan B is that one. There's no plan C.
Yeah.
We're not voting on that. We're voting on the cluster.
I'm just asking a question. I'm not making a change to the resolution or anything.
Yes.
Just a question.
The premise of the cluster development is that it's based on a parallel plan. So the applicant is required to show a parallel plan, which shows what could be done on the site, what's called by right. Again, just having to go in front of the Planning Commission, not City Council. That establishes what we call a magic number. Your density bonuses, so if you preserve 20% open space, you get a 20% bonus. Preserve 30% open space, you get a 30% bonus. Preserve 45% open space, which this is, you get a 45% density bonus. He doesn't utilize all 45% of that density bonus, but this was provided in the packet to show that. This is not being voted on.
Right.
This development. So it's not Plan A or Plan B. What's being voted on is this, the cluster. This is it. This is the resolution that's before us with the recommendations that were made by the person who made the motion.
Now, let me mention one thing. Once, I don't think anyone seconded this, but once it's seconded, Mr. Beekner or any other member of the commission could move to amend it to make some of the modification in the resolution. So you always have that opportunity. So, Ms. Parakis?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, because I know you're new here, and I think the struggle for me is trying to take in all the concerns that I've heard and figure out a solution that's going to be best for everyone. So I still don't know which way I'm going to vote, but I want to make sure that any resolution that goes to City Council, whether it's a denial or not, at least highlight some of the concerns that we talked about. So when they're considering it, and if it's 4 to 5 or 8 to 1, whatever it is, they can look and see what were some of the stipulations in there and what were they thinking about. That's why I added the part about the ranches. I mean, I'm still really bothered that an 1,800 square foot home could cost $600,000 or $800,000. That doesn't really resolve the downsizing issue for seniors. So, trying to do my best here. I don't know. But that's why I wanted to make that change to the proposal. I still don't know which way I'm voting. Got to figure it out quick.
Okay, do we have a second to the resolution? Mr. Faison seconds it, so. All right, any discussion on the resolution? The only thing I'll say is that, yeah, this is a difficult situation. You know, I have been pretty silent during the discussion, but I know that this is a tough situation because of how passionate you feel about your subdivision. And in fact, I drove down the street just the other day and I saw the backup of cars trying to get into Leonard School. So I know there needs to be some attention to that situation. I think a stop sign at the end of Eckford would be a small improvement, and also something to do with the way that street curves there. It's crazy and obviously you see that every day. But I also see that this community, having served on the Green Space Preservation Committee that the city set up a couple of years ago, and just noticing over the years, people in the city of Troy have demanded over and over, preserve our green space, please preserve our green space. And this plan, the cluster plan, is one way of doing that. Is it perfect? No, it's not perfect, but it's a better solution than the parallel plan that's been presented, because with that plan, I know you all wanted to have maybe 9 homes. With the parallel plan, which by right the developer can present, there's going to be 21, maybe 18 to 21 homes, but it will decimate the green space on that property, whereas this cluster plan is going to preserve more of the green space than would have been possible under the parallel plan. So I'm going to vote in favor of the resolution based upon all the modifications that have been made to it. Any other discussion? Mr. Hudson.
Yeah, I'd like a little, I'm going to give you my thoughts on, the question was asked of Mr. Michaels, what percentage would be ranch-type homes? I think he offered 50%, somewhere in that nature, I can't recall. Then we willy-nilly go from 100% down to 70%. And I'm thinking, this man's a developer. He's putting a lot of energy in this. What if he can't get buyers to reach that 70%? Does that destroy the whole plan? I think we've taken away his discretion. I disagree. I think that it's a good faith effort he said that, but I think to make that resolution contingent upon a 70% commitment is out of line, and I don't like that. But that's my thoughts on the resolution.
Any other comments on the resolution? Yes, Ms. Parakis.
Well, I mean, I would like to comment on that requirement. I came up with 85% because I took the 3 homes that he said were he couldn't do into ranches, and I'm using the language from the zoning ordinance that says that he has to demonstrate innovative and creative site and building designs and solutions. So in order, in my opinion, to be able to waive a deviation, there has to be something creative. And so to me, that would resolve that. That's how it wasn't random. It was 84%. So how do you make, that 1%? So I dropped it down to 22 out of 26 houses had to be ranches. That's how I came up with the number.
So that's creative? I don't think so.
Well, I think I don't know how are we justifying a waiving of the setbacks? Then really we shouldn't be, because we're not following the zoning ordinance. I mean, the zoning ordinance requires that they have to demonstrate something innovative and creative. For me, at least that's an argument towards it. Alternatively, there is no argument. We shouldn't be approving it. So if it's not going to be the 85%, I wouldn't be able to approve it. Yeah, I mean.
Mr. Faison and Ms. Malala.
So, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to echo your comments, because that was my thought process as well. I think the project will be a material change in the character of the neighborhood. And I acknowledge that, and I heard all the residents, we all did. But I think it's a better plan than the parallel plan. And that's why I support it. And I also think the developers seem to have offered and volunteered improvements to the plan as part of this discussion. So that's why I'm supporting.
Ms. Malala.
I'm just curious, the stipulation of 75 or 85% of the ranches, of the homes be ranches, how do we ensure that? Because if he is not able to sell a ranch, and if customers coming in love what he has to offer, but they only want the colonial model, he will just have to go build that for them. I don't know. I really, I know how I'm going to vote on this one, but I'm also struggling with the kind of language that we are trying to put in. How does one ensure that? What kind of flexibility is built into this?
Before I recognize Mr. Rahman, if anyone wants to make a resolution or an amendment to the resolution, they're welcome to do that. So, Mr. Rahman, then Mr. Safinant.
No, I was just going to ask our attorney about to answer this question. I have a similar question. Do you think that, what is the legal side that if they don't do it, they make all of them like 2 stories?
Well, Mr. Michael has suggested to us that he can sell at least 60, I heard 60 to 70. We've thrown about all sorts of numbers. So I think there's a certain level of confidence on Mr. Michael's part that he's going to be able to sell the ranches, except for those 3 where he can't build on them. But in terms of enforcing, if this goes to City Council and City Council approves a resolution that is conditioned upon them being ranches, then Mr. Michael will have to market the product to sell ranches. He won't be able to sell, based on the resolution passed by the City Council, he won't be able to market non-ranch units for other than those 3 parcels. But it sounds to me like this is what he wants, that's the product he wants.
It's on the
to
record,
sell.
so is that you agree?
It's up to the chairman.
Come on up.
We're committed to basically building and selling ranches. We do it already. It's a market that definitely is strong and is unmet. There's how many people are building ranches out there? Most of the builders might have 1 or 2, and that's it. So we're okay with that. The only concern we have is being able to fit them on a couple of the lots that are shallower, and we just don't want to box ourselves in and have to make a ranch that, is so small that somebody doesn't want it because the bedrooms are 9 by 9 or something like that. So the 2 in the front are actually a little bit shallower, so I'm a little concerned about those. So, I'm okay with the 70 because I know that I got 5 lots that if I can't fit a ranch, believe me, we've been through this. We've offered that 2-story and the ranches. 80% of the people buy the ranches. They want the ranches. That's really, we don't want to have to go up and down stairs because of those knees, right? So I'm very good with that. I'm okay with that. Otherwise I'd be screaming and yelling, please don't do it. We're not coming in here and saying we're going to do one thing and do another. We really want to do the ranches. That's what we're for. So the 70 works for me because I'm just concerned about lots 25 and 26, whether or not I've got a big enough footprint to get it all on 1 story. That's my only concern there. Other than that, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Mr. Savinant, you had something you wanted to mention.
I was just going to, Julie beat me to the punch that an hour ago or whatever it was, the developer stood at the podium and said 60 to 70. I understand the science, the scientific method that Ms. Parakis applied, but he did agree to at least 70%. So that, we've got that going for us.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, Ms. Parakis.
I just had one more question, probably for the planning department. On the parallel plan, there were 2 cuts onto Eckford. They're permitted to do that, do a U. So there
Yes.
could be an entrance and an exit both ways.
Yes.
Even with the drain there, they can cross over it.
Yes, they have to accommodate crossing the drain, doing a culvert or something of that nature, but yes, they could have 2 X's on the Exford.
Any other comments, questions on the resolution? I guess we're ready for the roll call.
Mr. Krent?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Ms. Malalahali?
No.
Ms. Parakis?
Yes.
Mr. Rahman?
No.
Mr. Changle?
Yes.
Mr. Biekner?
Yes.
Mr. Faison?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Resolution passes, and now it goes to City Council, and as Mr. Savinant said, you're welcome to attend that meeting to give your input there.
I don't have a date yet, but it'll be upcoming.
All the neighbors get notice, don't they?
All neighbors within 300 feet will be notified.
Okay. All right, we'll give people a few minutes to leave the room, and then we will, those who want to leave the room,
Mr. Michael, are you working with an attorney for that preservation agreement? The preservation, open space preservation, do you have an?
All right, any
Okay, all right.
public comments for items on the agenda? Seeing no comments for items on the agenda, we will come back to Planning Commission comments. And last time I started there, so tonight I'll start over here. So, Ms. Zarnecki, do you have anything you'd like to share with us?
I will do my best to do the minutes as complete.
Thank you. That's all we can ask for. Mr. Beekner.
So I just felt uncomfortable with this whole process. As we look at the master plan, can we try to do better in the future? I guess that's to Brent. And
Do better specifically with what?
I just feel like this isn't what the neighborhood needs, and I feel like there's big changes.
We have to make sure you don't talk about what we just talked about. I'm sure the assistant city attorney, but if you have comments related to the general planning process, that you're welcome to make those.
Will we have the ability to make the master plan, make it better for our citizens? Is that to you, Brent?
I think we're working on that right now, but I think the first part is the neighborhood know part, and then we'll move on to probably other things as time goes on.
There's a bunch of spaces like that.
Oh, yeah.
There's a bunch of spaces out there that we've got this coming, guys.
There are, yep.
I feel awkward about it. That's my comment.
Ms. Malala Holly.
None, thanks.
Mr. Hudson?
Yeah, Brent, could I make a request? We've been approving open space agreements as a matter of course with all our plans. I've never seen one. Could you furnish each one of us a copy of the open space agreement so we know what
I can do
we're
that,
doing?
Mr. Hudson. Each one is a little bit different. I can give you a sample
Why
representation.
don't you give us the form and then you can just put asterisks where changes get made.
Mr. Hudson, we don't. I don't have a form because I.
How about doing this then as a compromise?
I'll send you what's been approved. That's what I can do.
As soon as it's approved in this project, send us a copy.
Would you like previous ones, though? I guess is what.
No, I don't want to read 20 of them if they're all going to be different. I was
They're
looking
they're
for
slightly
a
different. And the
theme
reason
or
for
at
that-
least a master form.
The reason for that, Mr. Hudson, is I like the developer to come to me, because sometimes if the developers want to use the same format, there's nothing new or creative. So I have the developers submit their first draft to me. Usually they end up going on the city's website and finding the previous versions and just using that as their form. But there's some of them are different.
Send me one when it's done.
I will.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Faison?
Nothing from me.
Mr. Krent?
All I got to say is, Mr. Beekner, welcome to the Planning Commission. This is the job not only that we do, but cities and municipalities across the state. And if you ever attend one of our conferences, you'll feel the same vibe. This is not an easy job.
Ms. Parakas?
I know it's a little bit late, but I did want to bring one other thing up. In Mr. Kappa's email to us, the last line that he wrote was, lastly, the builder's agent has indicated that this is a done deal with the city. It bothers me a lot. To be fair, we haven't asked the developer or their agent if they made that statement. But you know, I've noticed around the city, and in particular the corner of Long Lakes and Crooks, where we had a PUD development come in, and the northwest, if you guys remember the northwest corner there, they came before us twice with a concept plan. And there's a sign there that advertises coming soon, Troy's premier mixed-use development, boutique hotel, office headquarters, retail. So for me, not only is it presumptuous, but it's very misleading, and it makes the city look not very transparent. I'm not suggesting that there's any wrongdoing, but from where I sit as a planning commissioner, it makes me wonder what the developers know that I don't know. Because they came before us a couple times, we gave them our thoughts, and they're advertising something that it's not currently zoned. When I asked a city official about it, the response was that we can't regulate sign content. So is that really the truth? I could put up a sign in my property that said, coming soon, 5-story hotel, apartment, whatever I want?
Can I answer that?
Yeah, it's a question. I mean, I'm not being rhetorical.
Welcome to my life. Because here's what happens when that sign goes up. Who do they call? They're not calling you. They're calling me. So that happens all the time. They get the zoning incorrect. They put up false or misleading information. They want to make a sale. They want to sign a lease, and it's not all people in real estate business, but it's enough of them where it makes my life miserable at times. I agree with you. It's misleading at best. It's at worst unethical, and it really bothers me. And if you can come up with a way to curtail that, I'd love to hear it.
So we can't regulate signs, is what you're telling me?
Well, what I've done numerous times is I've called if it's a real estate broker sign, I call them up and talk to them, or I email them and say, can you please, change this misleading message? There's other times where a property goes on the market, and maybe it's not a sign on the property, but it's a listing, and it's incorrect. So I get all kinds of phone calls about an incorrect listing with incorrect zoning, or I start getting emailed concept plans that are incorrect and they don't read the zoning ordinance. It's difficult on many levels, not just on the sign that's in front of the building. I agree with you.
So as a question for the Long Lakes and Crooks one, wouldn't that be an incorrect zoning that we could say you have to take that down? It's not zoned for that, so you can't advertise that.
That's the real estate sign. They're allowed to put that up.
Because it's not like a green city sign?
It's content.
You can't regulate the content of a sign.
Okay.
Marcus, Reed versus Gilbert.
Okay. All right. So if it were like a green city sign, you can't do that, but it's a real estate sign. So.
Time, place, and manner of a sign. So the size, how it's lit, etc. But you can't regulate the content of what it says. And so by saying you can't say that zone is certain, reading the content, you can't regulate that.
And I agree with you, because it's part of, one of the things that we deal with on a regular basis is narrative, rumors, misinformation. That doesn't help when there's signs like that.
Right.
Because you hear comments like, it's a done deal. Well, it's not a done deal. Mr. Michael doesn't, I've worked with him a couple of times. He doesn't think it's a done. Do you think he thinks it's a done deal after tonight, about 20 minutes ago? Do you think he thought it was a done deal? I don't think he thought it was a done deal. So.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Mr. Rahman.
I'm all set. Thank
Mr. Tagle.
Thank you.
Mr. Frayne.
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Savinet. Mr. Carlisle.
Just real quick, Mr. Practice, to your point, though, the applicant is coming before you in the near future, so you can fairly share your thoughts with him as he comes before you. So.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, there's a lot of urban myths that go on, some of them true and some of them not. Like, just ask somebody why IKEA is not in Troy, and you'll get 3 different versions of what actually happened. So. But I just wanted to thank everyone, including the audience and all the members of the commission, for handling what could have been a very contentious discussion very civilly and calmly, and so I appreciate everyone's input. So with that, we are adjourned.
Thank you. So you're going to get this guy?